Driven to the brink by ruthless abusers, a poor schoolgirl decides to end her life. However, fate's loop gives her a second chance. She is reborn in the body of her twin sister. From here, her journey of transformation to fight evil and find true love officially begins. At a high school in Brainbura Province, Tita is the daughter of a renowned prosecutor and also the leader of a powerful sorority. She is being blindfolded and led to receive her birthday present. Upon opening her eyes, Tita smirks triumphantly as her close friends drag a shy girl forward. The victim was Mai, a gentle, orphaned girl living in an orphanage. Mai was a familiar target of the TAA group's abuse. And today was no exception. One of them held an egg straight to Mai's head. They used her as their plaything, turning her into a living birthday cake for Tita, continuously pouring flour, sauce, and paint over her. They were even rough with her head, leaving her bangs matted and sticky with the music, and it didn't stop there. T personally stepped forward and poured a pungent mixture of fish sauce and roasted rice powder directly onto the top of her head. Feeling a little smugly angry, the whole group calmly went back to class, leaving Mai sobbing uncontrollably in her dirty, smelly state. Mai swallowed her tears, forced herself to get up, and hid in the restroom to wash herself. A little while later, Mai's only close friend at school, brought her some soap. Unexpectedly, as soon as Mai opened the door slightly, her mischievous friends swarmed in, filming with their phones and taking mocking photos. It turned out had also been forced to bring the soap as bait. After laughing their fill, the unruly group casually turned and left, leaving him standing there, consumed by guilt and remorse. But her cowardice prevented her from arguing with the bully, so she reluctantly closed the door to preserve her friend's last shred of dignity before silently returning to class. After tidying up, Mai walked into the classroom with her head down. The pungent smell from her uniform, stained with shrimp paste and egg powder, quickly spread. The entire class and the teacher stared at her in astonishment. The teacher kindly questioned Han, but Mai only dared to glance at the smug group of Tars below, too afraid to tell the truth. Understanding her students' awkwardness, the teacher gently told Mai to return to her seat, and subtly reminded the class to focus on the lesson and not pry further. After class, Mai trudged back to the orphanage. As soon as she passed through the gate, little Tun Cow happily ran out and hugged her tightly. Mai was the eldest sister here, always surrounded by the younger children who loved her dearly. At the same time, the kind-hearted woman who cared for the unfortunate also came out. Seeing her dirty appearance, she anxiously asked, not wanting to upset her foster mother. Mai lied and said she accidentally bumped into someone and spilled food on them. Ms. sighed, reminding Mai to be more careful, then urged her to quickly take a shower and change. After showering, Mai excitedly opened the gift box she had just received. This was a gift from a mysterious benefactor who had persistently sent her things to encourage her all this time. This time, the gift was a pretty pink woolen jacket, making Mai smile warmly. Noddy, a handsome male student, the son of a humble car repair garage owner, and also an outstanding swimmer at the school. Today Noddy participated in the swimming championship, and his father put aside his work to come and cheer him on. As the starting whistle blew, Noddy bravely plunged into the water, sprinting ahead of his opponents with his skillful technique. He quickly crossed the finish line first, brilliantly winning the prestigious gold medal. Meanwhile, in the bustling capital of Bangkok, a strikingly beautiful girl with a face identical to Mai's appeared. She was Mai's twin sister, a fact she was completely unaware of. In contrast to her younger sister from the countryside, Minute was adopted early on by a wealthy woman and a high-ranking official. Her luxurious upbringing molded Minute into a hot-tempered, arrogant woman who absolutely refused to yield to anyone. The high-ranking official treated Minute like a princess, meticulously preparing a mountain of extravagant gifts for her. Even though her daughter was only going on a one-day outing, and she was fed up with the music because of the excessive attention, the young lady politely refused, insisting on only accepting cash. The lady reluctantly complied but still slipped a thick wad of money into her daughter's hand. Just then, Noddy called and invited Minute to meet her in front of the house. Having been close friends since childhood, Noddy had long had feelings for Minute, but her cold personality had prevented them from taking their relationship further. As soon as Noddy saw Minute, she excitedly showed off her victory. In response to her joy, Minute remained indifferent, showing little interest. When Noddy bent down to give her the gold medal, Minute was engrossed in her phone, the screen displaying a mysterious message from June. It implied Minute had been very happy since Jun's death. After reading it, Minute stood frozen in shock. Noticing her lover's strange behavior, Noddy anxiously called out to him. Having regained his composure, Minute coldly dismissed Noddy and turned to go inside. Confused, Noddy silently put away the medal and sadly went home. The next morning, Mrs. Gohan personally drove Minute on a picnic. Throughout the journey, Min's mind was restless, constantly checking Jun's messages. Upon arrival, Mrs. Kwan carefully offered her daughter a scarf, reminding her to keep warm in case of the biting cold. Despite her mother's thoughtfulness, Minute firmly refused. Meanwhile, Noddy, still not giving up on the idea of giving her the school medal, proactively arranged to meet Minute before departure. Upon seeing the memento, Minute suddenly became irritable, demanding an explanation and threatening to leave. Noddy, as was her habit since childhood, teased her. Unexpectedly, Minute flew into a rage, threw the medal back, and stormed off. Once again, Noddy stood rooted to the spot, completely bewildered by what she had done wrong. At the meeting point, Minute encountered her two best friends, Kat and Lila, anxiously waiting. Music. Minute slowly approached with an irritated expression, ignoring her friends' warm greetings, and remained completely silent. When pressed repeatedly, Minute snapped back and walked straight to the car, leaving Kat and Lila staring at each other in bewilderment. Upon arriving at the picnic location, the handsome homeroom teacher, Kiwi, allowed the students to relax and stroll around, while also asking class president Pale to keep an eye on them. At that moment, Goonie, a mischievous male student, caught the teacher's attention, teaching his younger classmates how to smoke. Teacher Kiwi and another teacher immediately chased after him to punish him. Thanks to his quick wit, Goonie managed to escape, leaving the two teachers breathless as they chased after him in a hilarious scene. Meanwhile, back with Minute, she had learned the truth about her twin sister. Coincidentally, her younger sister was living in an orphanage in Brackenbura province, which was the very location of this picnic. After much effort, Minute finally managed to contact her sister, but the nervousness prevented her from speaking. Embarrassed, she hung up and hurried towards the restroom. Just then, her sister, Mai, passed by the nearby cafe. She also worked part-time in the area. Ironically, the two sisters still haven't met. Just as she reached the restroom door, Minute ran into Kat and Lyle. Not wanting to talk, she quickly slipped inside, ignoring her friend's calls. Immediately afterwards, Mai also went in to wash her face, unaware of the trouble that was about to ensue. Tid and his gang of troublemakers had followed them, looking for trouble. Tid interrogated Mai for skipping her cleaning duty to work overtime. Exhausted, Mai bravely asked what she had to do to be left in peace. Tid, cold and ruthless, forced Mai to kneel down and rummage through her feet. At this moment, Minute was in the closed bathroom, hearing a familiar voice. Suspicious, she wondered if it was her younger sister outside. Even though Mai had resigned herself to kneeling, Tita showed no mercy, relentlessly spewing venomous words. The situation escalated when the wicked woman insulted Jay and the orphanage. Through these harsh words, Minute Banghoang realized the person outside was her own sister. The situation reached a climax when Tita continued her insults. Having always respected Jay and the orphanage, Mai angrily shouted, demanding that Tita not betray her benefactor without any hesitation. Tid sarcastically remarked that Mai's tuition was only possible thanks to her father's charity donations, then maliciously called Day derogatory names and subjected her to insults. Mai, overwhelmed with anger and resentment, broke down in tears, pushed Tid away, and shouted for them to stop. Tid then signaled her friends to restrain Mai, and the whole group attacked the young girl mercilessly. Witnessing the scene through the open door, Minute could only cower and burst into tears, lacking the courage to step out and save her younger sister. In a panic, she banged loudly on the door, hoping the thugs would be frightened away. Sure enough, T and her friends were startled and quickly left. After they were out of sight, Mai slowly shuffled to the bathroom door, sincerely thanking them through her tears. Unaware that the person hiding behind the door was her older sister, Mai heard the choked words of thanks, and Minup's heart ached. She blamed herself for her cowardice. A moment later, Mai slowly left, leaving Minute to collapse and sob uncontrollably in unbearable remorse. Meanwhile, Min's school group finished their schedule and prepared to leave. Teacher Kiwi gathered the students for a commemorative photo. Unintentionally, Mai's small figure was also captured in the frame from a distance. When it was time to call for roll call before boarding the bus, the whole class panicked upon discovering Minute was missing. Teacher Kiwi asked Kat and Lila to call her, but the phone was switched off. Given the urgent situation, Teacher Kill instructed everyone to spread out and search. The group searched every nook and cranny, but all their efforts were in vain. There was absolutely no trace of Minute. Darkness had fallen, and there was no time to delay. Teacher Kill decided to send the students back to their school in Bangkok first, while he continued searching for his student. At the same time, upon receiving the terrible news, Mrs. Kwan rushed to the scene, distraught and weeping bitterly, worried about her daughter's safety. The next morning, Mai was summoned to a meeting room to confront TAA's family. The reason was that TAA, with malicious intent, had staged a scene playing the victim. She provided the teacher and parents with a cleverly edited video secretly filmed of Mai fighting back and pushing down her abuser. Even more brazenly, TAA falsely accused her of being the one Mai had been harassing all along. Believing in the fabricated evidence, the teacher harshly demanded that Mai bow her head and apologize. Despite being cornered, Mai remained resolute, asserting her innocence and absolutely refusing to accept the teacher's angry response. Her father, using his influence, pressured the principal to expel Mai immediately. Her disadvantaged background, coupled with the overwhelmingly fabricated evidence, proved ineffective. Mai could only grit her teeth and endure the unbearable injustice. The confrontation ended. The homeroom teacher gave Mai a voluntary withdrawal form, advising her to withdraw proactively so that her record wouldn't be marked with a warning sign. Desperate, Mai sobbed and asked the teacher if she believed she was the real victim of bullying. Faced with such a deeply unsettling question, the teacher could only stand silently, her eyes welling up with tears, unable to utter a word. Helpless, the female teacher approached and sat beside Mai, gently advising her to sign the document. In reality, Ta's father wielded immense power as he was a high-ranking prosecutor. If he intervened further, Mai's future would undoubtedly be 100,000 times worse. Cornered, Mai reluctantly signed the resignation letter, tears welling up in her eyes as she lamented her unfortunate fate. After submitting the letter, Mai walked back to class with a heavy heart. But the tragedy didn't end there, as Tia's group of friends continued their cruel remarks. The girls scribbled graffiti all over her desk, loudly mocking her expulsion, saying it was unbearable. Mai angrily asked Tita the reason for her intense hatred. In response, Tita casually and cruelly retorted, "Oh, I hate you simply because M is me." Hearing this absurd answer, Mai burst into tears, frankly responding that someone with such a mindset was truly pathetic. Her words had provoked and angered the tormentor. Tit immediately ordered his friends to drag Mai to the back of the school. In a secluded corner, they heartlessly stripped off the victim's outer clothing and filmed the humiliation with their phones. Despite Mai's desperate struggles and cries, the entire class remained indifferent, no one intervening. The girl in question could only cower in a corner, silently watching her friend being abused with overwhelming guilt. After school, Mai wandered aimlessly to the deserted bridge, lost in a series of tragedies. The young girl was consumed by utter despair. Finally, Mai decided to throw herself into the icy water, ending her dark days in the presence of Mr. Kill and Mrs. Kwan. 2 long days after Min's disappearance, both were surprised to receive news that she had been found. Unable to hide their excitement, they immediately rushed to the hospital. At the same time, Noddy kept texting Minute, but received no response. Amidst his turmoil, Noddy was called to compete. This swimming competition was a life-or-death opportunity for him and the national team. Ironically, Min's image kept haunting him, causing him to lose focus. As a result, when the starting whistle blew, while the other athletes plunged into the water, Noddy remained rooted to the spot like a lifeless statue on the starting platform. Back then, the police, along with Mr. Kill and Mrs. Kwan, found Minhee, the music, the girl lying unconscious, clutching the scarf Mrs. Kwan had given her earlier. However, the person lying motionless there was actually Mai, but everyone mistook her for Minute. At the hospital, the doctor announced that the patient had suffered severe drowning, leading to psychological trauma and temporary amnesia. Upon hearing the diagnosis, Mrs. Kwan burst into tears of sorrow. At that very moment, Mai opened her eyes and regained consciousness. She stared blankly at Mrs. Kwan, but her memory was so blank that she didn't recognize anyone. Overwhelmed with love for her daughter, Mrs. Kwan asked permission to take her back to Bangkok to care for her. After agreeing, the 2 women helped each other to the waiting area to get their medicine. While Mrs. Owen was away, the narrow alley of the musical world brought Tien Ko to life. Upon seeing the face that looked exactly like Mai's, his bullying instincts kicked in. Tien So stepped forward, brazenly sat down next to her, and prepared to utter his usual sarcastic and teasing remarks. However, Mai, currently disguised as Minute, was very decisive. She forcefully pushed T's hand away, glared straight at her, and coldly demanded to know if the 2 of them knew each other. Humiliated, T became furious and roughly grabbed Mai's hair. The pain made Mai scream in fear. Standing a distance away, the official heard the scream and rushed to her rescue, loudly questioning the stranger. With her arrogant nature, Tia defiantly questioned the middle-aged woman, asking who she was. Without a hint of hesitation, Mrs. Kwan declared firmly that she was the biological mother of the girl sitting there. This assertion was like a cold shower, leaving Tia stunned. Mrs. Kwan then sternly demanded that the insolent student immediately bow her head and apologize, threatening to call the police if she didn't comply. Tid's attitude changed abruptly. She quickly apologized in a sweet voice. She evasively claimed she'd only mistaken her for someone she knew, then hurriedly slipped away. As soon as the troublemaker left, Mai was suddenly struck by a terrible headache. Fleeting, tragic images of the beating she'd received unexpectedly flooded her hazy mind. Seeing her daughter clutching her head in pain, the woman panicked. In her distress, Mai thou begged her mother to quickly get her out of this suffocating place. Obeying her daughter's plea, the woman immediately took Mai, now living under the identity of Minute, back to see the doctor. After the examination, the doctor smiled reassuringly, saying that seeing blurry images from the past was a positive sign, indicating that her memory was gradually recovering. After the conversation, the doctor and the lady left, leaving the girl in a quiet space to rest. At the same time, the tranquility of the hospital was broken by a handsome male student named Gun Khan. This reckless young man was precariously using a rope to climb down from the rooftop. That's Min's classmate, the most unruly boy in the school, with his eccentric personality and habit of dozing off. He dares to defy the rules thanks to a shocking secret. His father is the principal. However, his powerful father is determined to keep this relationship a secret from the students. This time, Gankan ends up in the hospital because he caused a major disaster with his music, angering his father so much that he got severely scolded. Today he caused another commotion, swinging down the building on a rope to threaten the doctor into giving him discharge papers. As he was lowering himself, he stopped abruptly near Min's hospital room, spotting Mai disguised as her classmate. His courage and agitation caused him to shout her name. Mai was startled and surprised, not understanding what this madman was up to. In the midst of the tension, the rope snapped, causing Gan to fall freely to the ground, lying motionless. Mai, panicked, rushed to the window to check. Just moments later, the body suddenly sprang up, perfectly still. It turned out to be a spectacular prank orchestrated by Gan, who had been feigning distress to tease her to her limit. Nurses and security immediately rushed to subdue the mischievous boy. At this time, Kat and Lila went to the hospital to visit Minute unexpectedly. The carefree male student revealed that he had just run into Minute there, getting some juicy news. The two friends were overjoyed, completely ignoring their sick friend, and frantically searched for Minute. They proactively called Noddy to inform him. Without hesitation, Noddy rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, his eyes lit up when he saw Mai leisurely holding a glass of water in the hallway. Because of her carelessness, she bumped into a stranger, causing her glass to shatter. Noddy strode over to pick it up, gently tap her head, and playfully teased her about her clumsiness, just like in the old days. Seeing the stranger smile, Mein Gung was about to ask something when Noddy choked up and hugged her tightly, earnestly begging her not to disappear again. Reacting to the sudden embrace, Mai struggled to push Noddy away, her eyes defensively asking if they really knew each other. Noddy was stunned by the cold question and the shock, completely unaware of the tragedy of amnesia that was befalling her. He jokingly reproached his girlfriend, Nin, for being so heartless and forgetting him so quickly after their separation. The atmosphere was awkward when Kat and Lila rushed over, showering their friend with hugs, only to be met with Mai's bewildered expression, as she had no memory of anything. Settling in the hospital room, the four of them chatted strangely. No one realized that the girl before them wasn't Minute. The group was surprised and delighted by Min's transformation. She had become gentle, kind, and well-behaved. Own had completely shed her former impulsive and arrogant image. Kat and La were overjoyed that their friend had become so lovable and approachable. After the conversation had faded, the three reluctantly asked to leave. That evening, Mai passed her health checkup and was discharged from the hospital. Mrs. Kwan carefully helped her daughter home, affectionately showing her the certificates of merit and countless childhood photos. She hoped these mementos would help her daughter piece together her memories. According to the story, Minute had an outstanding academic record, always ranking in the top 3 of her class. This secret created a stark contrast, as Mai's academic performance was extremely poor. While engrossed in looking at photos, My curiously asked her mother why there were no birth photos of her anywhere in the house. Slightly flustered, Mrs. Kwan gently stroked her hair and honestly explained her background. She recounted the process of adopting Minute from the orphanage when she was 10 years old, her eyes filled with love. She firmly asserted that despite her mixed ancestry, she still held her in high regard as a mother and cherished her as a precious treasure she had given birth to. Deeply moved by her heartfelt words, my Yang was touched. She choked up, exclaiming that she must have accumulated good karma over many lifetimes to be so fortunate. Then she hugged the lady of the house tightly to express her gratitude. The next morning, Mai officially returned to school under the identity of Minute, and seeing her friends Lila and Kat, she was overjoyed and excitedly invited them to go karaoke to celebrate. Just then, the cold and quiet girl named Kil walked by. Kil was considered the class's mobile bank with her habit of spending money to treat her friends to food and drinks. Without hesitation, they eagerly invited her along. When she nodded, Kat proudly pulled in more students. Seeing this, the rebellious, male students at the back of the class called out, confirming whether Kil would cover the whole package. The whole class immediately cheered. Urging them to pay, after a moment of contemplation, she maintained a cold expression and nodded in agreement. In contrast to the crowd, Mai keenly noticed Kil's awkwardness and suddenly felt a heavy weight on her shoulders. Soon after, Mai fumbled with her locker because she'd forgotten the password. Confused, she pleaded for help, but no one could assist her as everyone had their own password. Others enthusiastically offered to share their lockers with Mai. Standing right beside her, Kil subtly glanced at Mai, seemingly plotting something. Once the students had settled down, Mr. Koo handed out the periodic test. In the midst of the serious atmosphere, Gankan stealthily sneaked in. His suspicious behavior didn't escape Mr. Kil's notice. After a few reprimands, Mr. Kil told him to return to his seat. On his way back, Gankan deliberately walked past Gooni's desk to tease him. The leader of the troublemaker group, Mai, timidly stepped forward to receive his test paper when the teacher called his name. Looking at the dazzling numbers, she was stunned to discover she had achieved a perfect score. Mai was overwhelmed with amazement, wondering how she could be so academically gifted. After announcing the results, Mr. Kyo and kindly instructed the class to lend a helping hand to Minute in overcoming her amnesia. The scene then shifts to Gan's private residence, where the male student is enjoying a lavish meal prepared by the chef. Just then, the principal walked in, bringing with him a suffocating atmosphere. Gankan had no affection for his parents because they were always preoccupied with work, neglecting their only son. Meanwhile, the students were gathered, singing, and having a lively time. Even so, Mai noticed that amidst the boisterous crowd, only Kay was burdened with profound sadness, a nightmare unfolding when the staff brought out the bill and demanded payment. All of Kil's credit cards had been rejected by the system. Overwhelmed with panic, she secretly hid in the bathroom to call her family for help. Unexpectedly, Kil's mother coldly announced that she had personally set a spending limit for her daughter. The harsh truth enraged Kil, who argued loudly with her mother over the phone. Coincidentally, Mai walked in and overheard the entire argument, vaguely understanding her friend's dire situation. The atmosphere in the karaoke room suddenly became tense. All the students sat in complete silence, not daring to utter a sound, because no one had enough money to pay the enormous bill. Having no other choice, they called Mr. Kil. Being responsible, he immediately rushed to the music department to clean up the mess, carrying a bill of nearly 30,000 baht. The teacher's face turned pale with sorrow. After reprimanding the class and sternly ordering them to disperse, he reluctantly took money from his pocket to pay the expenses. He briefly wished everyone well and told them to leave, leaving Mai Chver waiting for the magistrate's wife. Just then, Kil passed by, and Mai cautiously inquired whether the two had been close before. Before she could answer, the magistrate's wife's car slowly approached. Knowing that their houses were nearby, she enthusiastically invited Kil to ride home with her. As for Noddy, his home was simple yet happy. Every day, father and son would gather for dinner, the meal warm and filled with joyful laughter. Back in Mrs. Kwan's car, as soon as they dropped Kil off at the gate, all three were surprised to see a large number of police officers gathered in front of the house. The commotion stemmed from the fact that Kilu's mother's expensive gold and diamond bracelets had mysteriously disappeared. The official rushed out of the car to inquire. In a fit of rage, Kilu's mother revealed her suspicion that the maid had become greedy and stolen them. While all attention focused on the theft, Mai Tin Wai noticed a strange, panicked expression on Kilu's face. Worried about her friend, she cautiously approached to inquire. Unexpectedly, as if provoked, Kill angrily cursed Mai, calling her insane. She even sarcastically remarked that even if Minute had amnesia, her deeply ingrained evil nature would eventually resurface. After uttering these sharp words, Kill coldly turned and went back inside, leaving Mai standing there bewildered, completely clueless about what had happened. The next morning at school, Gankan continued his habit of dozing off from morning until late afternoon. In a corner, Mai, in Min's guise, sat listlessly, holding her chin, lost in thought. Noddy slowly entered the classroom, and seeing his beloved's sad expression, he approached to tease her, advising her not to frown as if he had found someone to help her. Mai, curious, subtly asked what her personality had been like before, and if she had really been that bad. Avoiding an answer, Noddy smiled meaningfully, subtly reminding Minute that normally Minute would just curtly call him Noddy. The conversation was interrupted when Class President Pale rushed into the classroom, loudly calling Kill to come down to the principal's office to see the teacher. There, a tense atmosphere prevailed. When the police questioned Kill about her mother's stolen bracelet, a surprising detail was revealed. The police officer in charge of the case was actually Pale's biological father. It turned out that the stern-faced class president came from a respectable police family. When Pale's father released the video of Kill selling the gold as evidence, he sternly demanded that she confess. Then, the police officer aggressively questioned her about where the rest of the diamond necklace was hidden. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Kill could only remain silent, unable to offer any defense. Back in the classroom, everyone was still chatting animatedly. The commotion died down when Principal Kill, Pale's father, suddenly entered with a stern demeanor. The principal loudly demanded to know who was named Minute Gan, who was dozing off in the back corner, was startled awake upon hearing his father's voice. Called by her name, Mai, in Min's guise, timidly stood up. Without hesitation, the principal ordered her to open her locker. Caught in a difficult situation, Minute confessed that she couldn't remember the password. The principal, suspicious, didn't believe her at all and continuously pressured her to open the locker at all costs, even if it meant making a mistake. Teacher Kill, looking for a hammer to smash through, heard the unreasonable order from his father, Gan. He coldly stood up, calmly picked up his chair, and swung his arm, smashing open his locker door. The sudden burst of force jolted all the students. After smashing it, Gankan glared at his father and silently carried the chair back to its original place. The cupboard door swung open, and everyone stared in astonishment at the familiar jewelry box inside. It was none other than Kyo's mother's jewelry box, nestled neatly within. Faced with this bizarre sight, Minute was utterly bewildered, unable to understand why this item had appeared in her personal space. Seizing the opportunity, Kill didn't hesitate to tell the principal that Minute had sent her to steal her own mother's belongings. Upon hearing Phi Lai's accusation, the principal sternly ordered Mai to accompany him to the disciplinary office for clarification. At that very moment, Noddy suddenly stood up, strode forward, and forcefully pulled her out of the classroom. Taking his beloved to a secluded spot, Noddy gently comforted Mai, urging her to remain calm. He advised her not to rush into confessing or succumb to her own strong beliefs. Noddy asserted that a good person like Minute would never steal anything from anyone. Listening to these warm words of encouragement, Mai was deeply moved and tears welled up in her eyes. In the office, the principal was having a private conversation with the police inspector, P.S. father. He cleverly persuaded the powerful parent, confidently stating that the school would handle the internal dispute smoothly to increase its influence. He argued that if any scandal broke, P would certainly be implicated. After all, the inspector's son was the class president of the suspect, and the family's reputation would be tarnished to some extent. Weighing the pros and cons, the inspector reluctantly agreed to the settlement. Once the agreement was reached, the principal gave Mr. Kill full authority to handle the matter. Upon receiving the order, the teacher immediately summoned Kill to the interrogation office to cover up the truth. Kill hadn't even fabricated the main story yet, but Minute used her power to force her to steal the diamond necklace. She added details about Minute threatening to harm her if she resisted, despite her elaborate act. Based on his experience, Teacher Ku didn't trust her one-sided testimony at all. Not wanting to waste time, he decided to summon Kill's mother to the school to inform her directly. As soon as she appeared, Kill's face showed clear disappointment, as she didn't want parental involvement. After a tense exchange, Kill's mother unreasonably accused Mr. Kill of deliberately covering up the bomb. In a fit of rage, she loudly threatened to demand that the school establish an independent investigation committee to get to the bottom of it. Instead of agreeing, Kill became even more enraged, raising his voice and arguing fiercely with his own mother. Witnessing his student's defiant attitude, Teacher Ku, disappointed, sternly reprimanded him. Unexpectedly, seeing the teacher scolding her child, Kill's mother, provoked, immediately turned to scold the teacher relentlessly, unable to bear the suffocating atmosphere. Annoyed, Kyo stormed out, pushing the door open. That evening, Mai, disguised as Minute, quietly waited for the shopkeeper to close so they could go home together. Suddenly, a strange woman approached, her voice tinged with sadness. She introduced herself as Jun's biological mother. According to her memories, Jun used to be a very close friend of Min's, and this was also the mysterious name that had sent the haunting, eerie messages to Minute not long ago. Just then, Mrs. Kwan finished her work and stepped out, meeting her mother's trembling gaze. Mrs. Kwan's expression immediately changed, revealing tension. Without delay, Mrs. Hot Hai hurried over to bow Boc Mai. Sensing the suffocating atmosphere, her mother, trembling slightly, explained that she had only happened to be passing by and stopped to exchange a few words. After explaining, she quietly bowed her head and asked permission to leave, leaving behind many unanswered questions. The next morning, Mai wheeled her bicycle out of the gate, preparing for her exercise. As soon as she set off, Naughty, beaming, ran up to her, teasing her and curiously wondering why she was suddenly so diligent today, because in his memory, the old version of Minute never exercised, and was even extremely lazy when it came to walking. Hearing his question, Mai was taken aback, silently wondering why she had been so lazy in the past. Putting aside their worries, they both smiled and walked side by side, pushing their bikes and breathing in the fresh air. The next morning, a tense parent-teacher meeting was underway. The silent leader was Pale's mother, the prestigious chair of the Parent-Teacher Association. She was also the organizer of a special tutoring class, reserving exclusive spots for the most outstanding students. Amidst the storm of public opinion, all the parents boycotted the class, resolutely refusing to let Minute participate in this elite program. In their minds, someone involved in theft didn't deserve to sit alongside the children of respectable families. Faced with this unreasonable attack, Mrs. Kwan angrily stood up and vehemently refuted that heartless prejudice. In a firm voice, she asserted that the theft case had not yet been concluded by the police and that her daughter was absolutely not the thief. To protect her reputation, she emphatically declared that she was voluntarily withdrawing Min's name from the tutoring list to avoid controversy. Seeing this indifferent attitude, Pale's mother felt a pang of unease, not wanting to lose such an excellent student as Min, but Mrs. Kwan's firm stance silenced any attempts to persuade her. The chairperson reluctantly nodded in agreement. Having said that, Mrs. Kwan held her head high and strode confidently out of the stuffy room. As soon as Mrs. Kwan left, Lila's mother seized the opportunity to sit close to Pale's mother. She subtly hinted at asking if there were any spots left in the elite class, hoping to secure one for her daughter. Judging people by their grades, P.S. mother bluntly poured cold water on the situation. They criticized Lila's academic abilities, saying she lacked the qualities to thrive in this environment. Facing the sarcasm, Lila's mother calmly pulled out a secret item. Disguised as a notebook, without hesitation, she stealthily slipped it under the table and gently pushed it over to Pale's mother. Being inherently greedy, the head of the Parent-Teacher Association's eyes lit up at the sight of the money. She quickly slipped it into her pocket, her disdainful expression vanishing in a fawning smile. She readily agreed to give Lila a priceless tutoring session. The next day, even before the bell signaling the end of class rang, Mai sat listlessly, her mind preoccupied with the unwarranted theft. The resentment that Mai felt made her reluctant to go home after school, so she lingered on the deserted rooftop. Leaning against the railing, gazing into the distance, in the midst of the quiet, the rebellious male student suddenly appeared. He deliberately steered his toy car straight into Mai's leg, the collision causing her to stumble and almost fall from the building. Seeing this, Gankan arrogantly asked Van Mai what she was doing up there, as this corner of the rooftop was his usual spot for afternoon naps. Mai gently confessed that she was feeling down and didn't want to go home. Taking the opportunity, she timidly asked if she had ever initiated a conversation with him before. With a faint smile, Gankan frankly stated that this was only the second time the Ice Queen had humbled herself to communicate with him. He had a clue. Mai anxiously questioned him about his true personality before he lost his memory. She tearfully confessed that she always felt lost, as if she were living under a strange guise. Gankan calmly replied that not having to live according to one's true self could sometimes be incredibly fortunate. He admitted that he also longed to erase his memories and start a new life. Hearing the profound philosophical ramblings, Mai's face fell in sadness. Noticing the strange silence, Gan Kan Tien leaned closer to Hua and revealed a shocking secret. He whispered that the powerful principal below was his biological father. Contrary to expectations, Mai smiled dismissively, not believing the crazy joke at all. She cleverly retorted that if it were true, Gan Kan should ask his father to help her clear up the false accusation. Hearing the sharp suggestion, Gan Kan's eyes flashed with calculation, and he immediately brought up the locker incident. He revealed that he had seen Kill carrying a bunch of keys with Minute last semester. From that, Gan Kan deduced that Kill had most likely secretly placed the necklace in Min's locker to create a false crime scene. Hearing the bitter truth, Mai froze in place, her whole body turning cold. The next day, Mr. Kill summoned the students for questioning. He discovered that Kill frequently splurged on cosmetics, treated his friends to meals, and possessed 5 credit cards. In contrast, Minute was not at all desperate to the point of stealing. When it was Goonie's turn, he confidently asserted that if he spoke up, the culprit would surely be caught. Then he loudly called out Goonie's name. Teacher Kiwi, surprised, questioned him back. Caught off guard, Goonie evaded the question, resentfully complaining about the troublemaking and unwarranted antics that he couldn't stand. Finally, Goonie defiantly demanded that the teacher punish him by making him do the troublemaking instead. Teacher Kiwi, helpless, waved his hand and chased the student out. During lunchtime at the library, Kill was choosing books when Lila and a group of female students surrounded him. They loudly demanded she confess, absolutely believing Minute wouldn't do anything so despicable. Kill sarcastically remarked that Minute was lucky to always have friends defending her. Goonie's girlfriend retorted, "Who doesn't have friends?" Offended, Kill bitterly declared she'd rather live alone than befriend them. The girls became enraged, berating Kill mercilessly, exposing her terrible personality as the reason no one wanted to befriend her. With her pride wounded, Kill angrily yelled at the crowd, exposing the truth that everyone was only interested in her money, and even worse, calling the whole group selfish. Furious, Kill stormed out of the library. Back in class, packing her bag, Kill stopped short as Minute slowly approached. Minute calmly explained that she remembered Kill knew the password because she had borrowed the key before, and even intentionally set the locker password exactly the same as hers, leaving no room for denial. Killu admitted to orchestrating everything and arrogantly challenged Minute to tell on her. She resentfully claimed that everyone always trusted Minute, and that Minute didn't need to try to please anyone. With teary eyes, Killu choked back tears, reproaching Minute for never understanding the feeling of humiliation. Feeling alone and invisible in the eyes of others, Minute was stunned and wept bitterly upon hearing her tearful confession. Kill's mind raced back to the day she borrowed the key, explaining that she did it simply to drag Minute down into the mud and make her suffer. With that, she grabbed her bag and ran off. On the way, Kill's thoughts drifted back to the day she borrowed the key. That day, a group of delinquents threw trash in her locker. Minute, who happened to be passing by, kindly lent her the key and gently comforted her, telling her to be strong. Grateful, Kill bought a new lock with a password the next day and returned it to Minute. She also splurged on concert tickets for the whole class, especially giving Minute the most expensive one. Unexpectedly, Minute resolutely refused and returned the money. Despite Killu's explanation, the two still argued. Minute angrily criticized the act of using money to buy friendship as pathetic. The harsh rejection deepened Killu's sadness, igniting a flame of hatred towards Minute from that day on. Awakened by the memories, Killu stood alone, sobbing in solitude. It was after school. Mai sat listlessly by the pool, confiding in Noddy. She reflected on her past, thinking she must have been very rude and unpleasant, which is why no one wanted to befriend her. Seeing her self-reproach, Noddy playfully splashed water at her. Mai stood up, grabbed the hose, and sprayed back. They both frolicked, getting their clothes soaked. Carelessly, Mai slipped and fell into the pool. The impact underwater triggered dormant memories. A series of traumatic images flooded back. Scenes of her being assaulted and then desperately throwing herself into the river to commit suicide. On the shore, Noddy was carefree, laughing and joking. Din Nin Minute was a good swimmer. After waiting a long time and not seeing his friend surface, he panicked and jumped in to pull Mai out. Dazed and disoriented, Mai frantically stepped out of the pool. Although Noddy, worried, offered to take her home, she resolutely refused. The young man reluctantly draped his jacket over her shoulders, sadly watching her figure trudge safely home. Mai was now fully aware of her true identity. She rushed into Min's room and rummaged through her belongings. Tin Ko found a newspaper clipping with an article about the orphanage where she grew up. Seeing the familiar images, memories flooded back, tearing at her heart, causing her to cover her face and sob uncontrollably. At that moment, Mrs. Kwan pushed open the door and entered, kindly asking Han a question. Mai, in her unstable state of mind, panicked and pushed Mrs. Kwan's hand away. She stood there bewildered. Mrs. Kwan gently apologized for entering without knocking and was about to leave. Looking at Mrs. Kwan's lonely figure, Mai suddenly remembered Mrs. Kwan's boundless love. She rushed forward and hugged her tightly from behind, sobbing with sorrow and regret. The next day, the school held a meeting to investigate the theft. At the beginning, the principal sternly asked if Minute had indeed instructed Kil to steal. Unexpectedly, Mai stepped forward to take the blame, falsely claiming she had used her friendship to threaten Kil. As she spoke, Mai's heartbroken mind conjured up images of her being abused and left alone, causing her to burst into tears. Sitting next to Kil, hearing her friend confess to the crime, Kyo shed tears of remorse. Mai continued to justify K's actions, saying she was forced to obey out of fear of being isolated and quickly seized the opportunity. The principal concluded that Minute had confessed, but at that moment, a pang of conscience compelled Kyo to bravely reveal the truth. Sobbing, she confessed that she was the mastermind behind the music arrangement. Kil's mother, shocked, pressed her for an explanation for not leaving her friend alone. Mai tearfully explained that Kil did it simply because she desperately longed for true friendship. The two girls put aside their animosity, clasped hands, and sobbed uncontrollably amidst the judgmental gazes surrounding them. The investigation resumed. Kil silently walked back to class. Suddenly, Ganken's toy car slowly approached, carrying a piece of paper with directions to her locker. As she opened the cupboard, she picked up the piece of paper and was moved by the warm message. Only the warmth of a friend's hand could pull the sadness from her aching heart, accompanied by a sincere offer of friendship. Reading those loving words, Kil burst into tears, soaking the paper. Never before had she experienced such a truly understanding friendship. The next morning, Mr. Kil stood before the class to clear his name, and sadly announced that he had submitted his resignation. The sad news caused the whole class to fall silent, regretting the loss of a friend. Afterward, Mr. Kil instructed everyone to check their lockers, and the curious students rushed forward, utterly surprised by the farewell gift. These were meticulously drawn portraits, each given as a gift. Everyone held the painting in their hands, feeling both joyful and moved. Mai, in Min's persona, received an even more special gift, a painting accompanied by a tear-soaked letter. Kil confessed that she had never truly experienced friendship before. Until Minute entered her life, depicted in the painting, Kil carefully wrote in small letters expressing her happiness at finally having Minute as a friend. After school, M and Noddy walk home together. Along the way, M sadly confided that she didn't want to remember the past because each memory that flooded back only deepened the image of a weak and incapable self. Having poured out her feelings, M quickly said goodbye and proactively extended her hand to shake Noddy's. Those strange actions and words left him bewildered, not understanding what Mai, in Min's guise, was implying. Nevertheless, Noddy politely extended his hand in return, simply thinking it was a novel way of saying goodbye. The handshake was brief, and Mai silently turned and walked away. The next morning, Mrs. Kwan went into the room to wake her daughter for school, but she was nowhere to be found. Entering the room, she was surprised to find a letter neatly placed on the study desk. The envelope clearly stated the sender was Mai. Trembling, she opened the envelope. She was shocked to read the message. Mai apologized for being cowardly and not daring to tell the truth directly. She confessed that her real name was Mai, an orphan who grew up in an orphanage in Brackenbura province. At the end of the letter, she expressed her boundless gratitude for the devoted care she had received from her grandmother. Returning to the time before Mai decided to leave, that night she searched Min's room, desperately wanting to know what her sister was really like. Finally, Mai discovered a small notebook containing detailed notes about both of them. It turns out Minute only learned the truth about her twin sister a few years ago. They were separated and raised in different orphanages. Continuing her investigation, Mai finds a secret box filled with familiar items. They're identical to the anonymous gifts she regularly received at Brachinbu. The truth is revealed. It was Minute who secretly sent those gifts. Turning to the next page of the diary, Mai read about Mrs. Kwan adopting Minute and taking her back to Bangkok. Ironically, before meeting Mrs. Kwan, another family had adopted Minute, but less than 3 days later, they heartlessly returned her to the orphanage. The shock was so great that Minute withdrew into herself. She refused to communicate with anyone. Until Mrs. Kwan appeared and Zhang embraced her warmly, the notebook revealed a shocking secret. Mrs. Kwan had actually met Minute by chance at the Prinbury orphanage before adopting her. Therefore, when she met Minute, Mrs. Din Nin thought this was the little girl she had met before. Because she longed so much for a home, Minute lacked the courage to tell the truth. She kept quiet about the fact that the woman she met in Brackenbury was actually her twin sister. After reading the whole heartbreaking story, Mai couldn't hold back her tears and returned to reality. Music. After Mai left, Mrs. Kwan went to call her daughter but found only an empty room and a farewell letter, each word like 1,000 needles piercing her heart. As Mai meticulously explained her true identity and upbringing at the Prackenbury orphanage, she emphasized a cruel truth. The rescue team must have made a disastrous mistake due to the identical appearance of the two sisters. This was accompanied by boundless gratitude for all the love the woman had given her. After reading the letter, which sounded like a suicide note, Mrs. Kwan's hands and feet trembled. She dropped Mink's notebook, sobbing and frantically running outside to search for Mai. As for Mai, she decided to return to the old hospital, reasoning that if everyone mistook her for Minute, then Min's real sister must also be receiving emergency treatment there. But the answer from the rescue team came like a bolt from the blue. They announced that on the very day she jumped to her death, the body of another girl had also been recovered. This shocking news left Mai Dun unable to stand. She frantically ran to a nearby temple to verify the information. There, a horrifying sight met her eyes. A photograph bearing her image and name was respectfully displayed. This terrible news meant that Minute had most likely passed away. And everyone was mistaking the cold corpse for Mai, standing frozen amidst the tragic scene. Mai was completely devastated, only able to bury her face in her hands and sob uncontrollably in utter despair. At the same time, Mrs. Guan had driven a long distance to the orphanage in Brackenbury. Here, she met Jay, the primary caregiver, and heard the full story of Mai's tragedy. Jay sadly revealed that Mai had chosen suicide because she could no longer endure the cruel bullying at school. The culmination was her unjust expulsion, which drove the young girl to the brink. Hearing these harsh truths, Mrs. Kwan was deeply shocked, and tears streamed down her face. In a panic, she frantically clutched Mai's hand, anxiously asking where Mai's body was being kept. Back at the temple, Mai was sobbing as she placed a wreath before the portrait. Just then, Mrs. Kwan entered the quiet space, her voice trembling as she called out Min's name. Though deep down she knew the person before her was a blessing, she stubbornly continued to deceive herself, clinging to the faint hope that Minute was still alive. Her heart shattered, and she wept bitterly, as if she had just buried a disfigured piece of her own flesh. Witnessing this profound suffering, Mai knelt on the cold tiled floor, earnestly apologizing. But Mrs. Guan still refused to accept reality, weeping bitterly as she clasped her hands in supplication. Mai, please don't tease me so cruelly anymore. I will resolutely call you by the name Minat Luke. Mai, all I can do is come and embrace you, madam. The two women leaned on each other, weeping for the pain that was tearing at their hearts, the scene shifting to the intermediary. No sooner had he arrived home than he received devastating news. His famous actress mother was preparing to remarry. Gan Kan's parents had divorced when he was very young due to his father's neglect and indifference towards the family. Gan Kan rushed upstairs, lost in thought, recalling that fateful day. Coincidentally, it was his birthday. Little Gan Kan, hiding under the table, intended to surprise his parents, but instead witnessed their argument and their decision to divorce right there and then. Even more cruelly, the father coldly declared that the child was not the result of true love. The shock was unbearable, causing the child to crawl out from under the table, crying hysterically and destroying his own birthday party. Back in the present, the rebellious boy is eating alone in his large room. The loneliness was broken when the loyal chef, who had cared for her since childhood, slowly walked in, carrying a small cake to light up her solitary birthday, and returned to Mai and Mrs. Kwan. After so much internal conflict, it seemed that both had begun to open up and understand each other better. Mrs. Guan Sosa pressed Mai about the tragedies she had endured in Brackenbury. Mai blamed herself, wondering if she had worked too hard to help the orphanage. She gently replied, "It was a voluntary act from the bottom of my heart." Moved by this understanding, Mrs. Kwan and reminded Mai that whenever she faced difficulties, she should feel free to ask, and she would certainly do her best to help. The warm words brought tears to Mai's eyes. She choked back tears of gratitude for the love and affection she had bestowed upon her like her own daughter. Mai turned to leave, but unable to control her emotions, Mrs. Kwan rushed forward and embraced Mai tightly from behind, sobbing as she confessed she couldn't live without her. She earnestly begged Mai to return and live with her one more time. At first, Mai hesitated, feeling guilty and wondering how she could so shamelessly live under someone else's identity. But when Mrs. Kwan earnestly begged her to pretend this cruel truth never existed, everything continued as before. Mai softened after an internal struggle, and finally nodded in agreement. At that moment, Mrs. Kwan was overjoyed, hugging Mai tightly and sobbing as if she had just found the most precious treasure in the world. The next morning, Mai woke up early and personally cooked a bowl of hot porridge for Mrs. Kwan. As soon as she came downstairs, Mrs. Kwan, though very happy, gently chided Mai for skipping school for 2 days without permission. However, the joy was short-lived when Mai insisted on not calling her by her usual affectionate mother, but instead addressed her formally as Miss Kwan. That distant way of addressing her caused Mrs. Kwan pain, and despite Mrs. Thia's pleas, Mai remained resolute in maintaining her distance. Helpless, Mrs. Kwan urged Mai to change clothes and go to school. As soon as Mai's figure disappeared behind the door, Mrs. Wan collapsed, silently weeping, looking utterly devastated. Meanwhile, Gan Khan was leisurely driving to school in his car. He coincidentally noticed Mr. Kill's car following right behind him. Gan Khan's mischievous nature resurfaced. He deliberately shouted loudly, startling the driver who slammed on the brakes, causing Mr. Killu's car to lose momentum and crash into the back of the car in front. Showing no remorse, Gan Khan even pretended to clutch his neck and cry out in pain to buy time. He defiantly insisted that Mr. Killu call the insurance company to settle the matter. Just then, the principal's car arrived at the school. Witnessing his spoiled son causing trouble again, the father coldly ignored him, ordering the driver to drive straight inside. Ignored by his father, Gan Khan continued to tease Teacher Kill until he was satisfied, then nonchalantly picked up his bag and went to class, leaving the teacher standing there, left to deal with the mess. During lunchtime, while the unruly students at the back of the class were engrossed in playing games, Mai, in Min's guise, quietly and diligently worked on her homework alone. At that moment, Kat Tin noticed that her friend's handwriting had completely changed. To be sure, Kat secretly took Min's old notebook to compare and was astonished by the clear difference. Sitting right next to her, witnessing this, Mai's face suddenly turned pale with fear that her fake identity would be exposed. Immediately afterwards, Kat turned to Noddy and asked suggestively if someone with amnesia could remember their swimming skills. Hearing Noddy's naive reply, "Probably not," Mai felt uneasy and quickly excused herself to go to the infirmary to avoid suspicious glances. At the same time, Gan Khan also used the excuse of recovering from a traffic accident to sneak off to the infirmary to sleep in. In reality, he was just sprawled on the bed, glued to his phone, following the scandalous news about his famous mother. When Mai timidly walked in and saw him, she kindly approached to ask if his injury was serious. Contrary to her concern, Gan Khan, seething with anger, rudely pulled back the curtains and snapped to get rid of her. He lied about being seriously injured and loudly asked Mai not to bother him. Despite this, Mai, desperate for companionship, tried to find a way to keep the conversation going. She hinted at her curiosity, promising to tell Gan Khan an interesting secret, but warned him not to believe her too quickly because she was a habitual liar. This tactic certainly worked. Gan Khan, curious, pulled back the curtain to eavesdrop, taking a deep breath to muster his courage. Mai solemnly announced her real name. Hearing her half-joking, half-serious confession, Gan Khan smirked, teasing her about his bad luck in encountering someone even more cunning than himself. His competitive nature kicked in. He refused to be outdone and immediately retaliated with another shocking secret. The male student boldly revealed that the famous actress Janissa was his biological mother. Shocked by this news, Mai was astonished, then giggled. She thought, "This is just a clumsy lie from my friend to get revenge on me." After a brief pause, Mai left. On her way back to class, she unexpectedly encountered her homeroom teacher kneeling. Suddenly, both their phones rang simultaneously. Mai received a text message from a mysterious phone number under the name June. The words displayed on Mai's screen were laced with cold, threatening questioning. How long was she going to pretend to forget about Jun? After reading the chilling message, Mai panicked and blurted out Jun's name. That sound immediately attracted the attention of Teacher Kill, who turned around and pressed her to explain what she had just mumbled. Mai hastily explained that she had just received a strange message from an anonymous sender, and inquired if there was a student named Jun in the school. Taken aback by the unexpected question, Teacher Ku could only shake his head and say that the number of students was too large to remember everyone. Unable to find any clues, Mai reluctantly returned to class with a heavy heart. Back in the classroom, the students in the back corner were huddled together, gossiping excitedly about the articles exposing actress Janisa, Gankin's biological mother. They were maliciously fabricating stories that after divorcing the principal, she had spiraled into debauchery, promiscuously dating one man after another to swindle money. Unfortunately, Gan Kan, who was pretending to be asleep at his desk, overheard those venomous insults. Enraged, he jumped up and delivered a powerful kick that sent Guni, the ringleader, tumbling to the ground. Immediately, a brawl erupted as the two men lunged at each other. Mai rushed in to intervene, but as Li Ji was consumed by rage, Gankan pushed her away and continued his fight with Guni. Just then, Noddy walked in. He rushed to help her up with a worried expression, then charged straight into the middle of the crowd to intervene. When the situation reached its peak, the music teacher kill appeared just in time, loudly correcting the situation. He ordered the whole class to clean up the mess, and specifically named Gankan and Guni as needing to follow him to the teacher's room for disciplinary action. When his anger subsided, Gankan turned to check on Mai, but Noddy quickly pushed him away to protect her. Losing his balance and falling, Gankan only glared sharply at Noddy before trudging along with his bag, following behind Teacher Kill. That evening at Gankan's mansion, a suffocating atmosphere prevailed. When the principal stormed into his son's room, the reason was the morning's fight, his tone undeniably defiant. He demanded that Gankan write his own withdrawal letter, threatening to use his authority to send him abroad for further studies. Contrary to expectations, Gankan resolutely resisted, arguing back and angrily bringing up the past, recalling how the principal himself had declared he had never loved him and his mother. Because of that resentment, Gankan was determined to stay and cause trouble. He harassed his father until Ha-Da heard the disrespectful words, and his father's rage flared up. He swung his hand and slapped Gankan across the face, taking the full force of the blow. Gankan choked, grabbed his skateboard, and ran out of the house. He sobbed uncontrollably in the streets of Silent Night, ignoring the blaring car horns behind him heading towards Noddy. The quiet night only intensified his troubled thoughts. Unable to sleep, he took out his precious gold medal and gazed at it. An idea flashed through his mind. Noddy decided to give it to her as a gift. Despite the late hour, he, now under Min's identity, still texted Mai, inviting her to meet at the park. As for Mai, after reading the message, she quietly left home and went to the park to wait for him. Here, she encountered Gankan again, wandering aimlessly. Recognizing her, he inquired about the morning's incident. Mai gently reassured him that she was fine, still maintaining her habit of concealing her emotions. Gankan lied, saying he wanted to be alone, though deep down he longed for her to stay. Mai naively believed him and turned to leave. Seeing this, Gankan frantically called her back, scolding her for being wrongly accused of being a fool. Mai had no choice but to stop and keep him company. A little later, Noddy arrived at the meeting point beaming, holding a gold medal in his hand, but right before his eyes was Gankan kindly instructing Mai on how to balance on the skateboard. The painting was like a dagger to Noddy's heart, making him hesitate. Despite having traveled a long distance, he silently returned home in disappointment. When Mai arrived home, she was surprised to see Noddy's gold medal hanging by the door. She looked around but saw no sign of the giver, so she put the precious item in her bag. Mai went into her room, turned on her phone, and discovered a message inviting her to the park. She hastily explained that she had forgotten her phone at home, and asked if the medal was a gift from Noddy. Noddy coldly replied with a single word, yes, followed by an angry message saying he was about to go to bed, leaving her feeling guilty. The next morning, the classroom became lively as the teacher entered, gesturing for order to introduce the new student. The moment the mysterious girl walked through the door, Mai's face turned pale, stunned as if struck by lightning. The newcomer was none other than Tita, the daughter of the powerful prosecutor, the one who had cruelly tormented her when they were students in Brackenbury. In contrast to Mai, the male students cheered and welcomed her. While introducing herself, Tia's eyes scanned the class and then stopped when they met a face that looked exactly like the victim from years ago. The eye contact shocked her just as much. Teacher Kiwi quickly showed her where to sit to ease the tension. During lunchtime, while Mai's group of friends were eating, Tia proactively came over and asked to sit with them. Everyone friendly greeted Han. Only Mai remained silent, her face tense. The atmosphere eased when Noddy brought over a whole pack of bubble tea. Mai distributed them to everyone and also gave Tita a cup. Taking it, Tita curiously asked about Noddy and their relationship. Mai quickly replied that Minute and Noddy had been childhood sweethearts. Hearing this, Mai couldn't take it anymore and quickly excused herself to go to the restroom. The restroom was quiet. As she was washing her hands, footsteps echoed. Tita appeared, standing with her legs crossed provocatively. Tita sarcastically asked Mai if she remembered her, maintaining a cold demeanor. Mai replied that she didn't know who T was and turned to leave. Not giving up, Tita brought up their encounter at Prinbu Hospital, feigning apology for mistaking her for someone else and not wanting any further trouble. Mai uttered a few sarcastic remarks and then left decisively. After class at the tutoring center run by Pale's mother, a stark contrast unfolded. While the other students excelled, Lila struggled due to her weak academic performance and inability to keep up with the pace. As for Gan Kan, upon arriving home, he was immediately confronted by his father's icy demeanor. Without saying much, he threw the study abroad application at him, suppressing his resentment. G silently took it and trudged up to his room, sitting alone within the four walls. His mind drifted in a sea of thoughts. And then, Mai's image unexpectedly crept into his head. A sudden weakness made G angry. He slapped himself hard across the face as a punishment to extinguish the image he shouldn't be remembering. Meanwhile, Mai Doc was desperately searching for her twin sister. She diligently researched information about recent drowning victims. Amidst this ongoing trouble, her phone suddenly lit up with a chilling message from Run. The message was a challenge, announcing she was waiting at the library, accompanied by a strange series of book codes. The next morning, Mai rushed straight to the library. However, despite searching through all the shelves, she was left completely empty-handed. She went to the librarian's desk, showed the code, and asked her father for help. After typing for a while, the librarian regretfully informed her that the library didn't have any books matching the code in its records. Back in class, Tita was still putting on a show of being a friendly friend, using the same words as Tang Mei to chat cheerfully with Kat and Lai. Just as Mai walked in, the atmosphere instantly froze as their eyes met, recognizing each other. Kat asked Mai where she'd been, and she replied that she'd been to the library, while simultaneously shooting a wary glance at Ta. Sensing the hostility, Tita feigned understanding, stood up to offer her seat, claiming it was Mai's usual spot, and even offered to show her around the school. They quickly refused, revealing that Mai was suffering from amnesia. Hearing this, Ta was stunned, and began calculating in his head, suspecting that the person in front of him with the memories was Mai from years ago. Without a doubt, Kat and Lila enthusiastically took Mai's place in leading TA on the tour. During the lunch break, Gankan proactively brought a tray of food and sat with the group. Not long after, T also brought her tray and asked to join the table. As soon as she sat down, she made a sarcastic remark that at her old school, anyone who had to eat alone was someone ostracized by the whole school. Her cold words were aimed directly at T's past. Not stopping there, she even feigned pity for those who were lonely. Gankan immediately retorted, sarcastically remarking that those who had to humble themselves to beg others to sit with them were far more pathetic. The atmosphere became tense, so Kat quickly intervened, explaining that Gankan, music, was eccentric and preferred eating alone, but TA continued to mock him. The situation escalated when he turned to stare intently at May and remarked that her face resembled an old friend from Brackenbury. After a tense lunch, Tita secretly went to a corner and called her accomplice from her old school, claiming she had just seen Mai and was certain she hadn't mistaken her for someone else. The person on the other end seemed hesitant, unwilling to get involved after Mai's suicide. Those involved had already been dealt with. Despite this, Tita stubbornly insisted she could take photos as evidence. She immediately followed, hoping for an opportunity to secretly take a picture. But just as she was about to get close, Gankan suddenly jumped out and shouted loudly, startling her and causing her to drop her phone. Kat ran over and confronted Gankan, bluntly exposing her for being caught red-handed secretly taking pictures. She frantically denied it, but Mai and Gankan saw through her and relentlessly pressed her for an explanation. Kat joined in the questioning, asserting that TA was plotting something sinister and had been cornered. Tid turned pale, but Kat nonchalantly speculated that she was probably planning to sell the photos for money, then jokingly suggested they take a picture together. This contrasting reaction left everyone exasperated by her thoughtless and tactless attitude. Taking advantage of the moment when everyone was distracted, Mai quietly left and went to the teacher's room. The day Mr. Kilu summoned Gankan finally arrived. Following instructions from the principal, he was forced to persuade Gankan to sign the withdrawal form and go to study in England. With his gentle nature, he calmly advised Gankan that if he didn't want to go, he had every right to refuse. But Gankan bitterly replied that even if he resisted, he would still be forced. He decisively signed his name, then turned and left, leaving Mr. Kill with a helpless look in his eyes. As she stepped outside, she was surprised to see Noddy standing there awkwardly, seemingly lacking the courage to ring the doorbell. Smiling to break the awkwardness, she asked him to take her out for her favorite dish to relieve her stress. Noddy immediately agreed to take her to his house and personally cooked Min's favorite meal. Over a warm and cozy meal, the two ate and chatted intimately, feeling safe and secure. May decided to shed her strong facade and confide in him. She admitted that she had tried to be like Minute used to be, but deep down, she couldn't. Listening, Noddy gently comforted her, hoping to ease her pain. After the meal, Mai returned to her room, opened the drawer, and looked through the birthday cards Noddy had written for Minute, reading each line. A longing for Minute welled up in Mai's heart, along with a feeling of gratitude for Noddy's guidance in helping her understand her sister better. The next morning, Tita continued her friendly act, placing a bottle of milk on Mai's desk and stammering an apology for taking the photos. Mai remained cold and unresponsive, while Minute quickly intervened, advising Mai to let it go, even criticizing her for being too rigid. Hearing such unreasonable, biased remarks, Mai couldn't control herself. She stood up abruptly, turned her back, and walked out. This action caused a stir in the class. Many believed that Min's hot-tempered nature had returned. As she stomped down the hallway fuming, Mai was suddenly grabbed by the arm by a strange girl who rushed up to her. Blocked from her path, she bewilderedly asked for her identity, then blurted out whether this person was June. Contrary to expectations, the strange girl sadly shook her head, her voice low. Zulu Run passed away a long time ago, and my name is Nin. Receiving this shocking news, a premonition told her that Nin surely held a secret related to Jun's death, and she couldn't let this opportunity slip away. She pressed Nin with questions about whether she and Jun had been close before. In a calm voice, Nin recounted the past, revealing that Minute and Jun had been best friends since elementary school, always together and particularly fond of going to the library to read. Hearing the word library, Mai suddenly realized, remembering the cryptic message about a mysterious book that Jun had sent her. Realizing the urgency, Mai immediately turned and ran. Back home, she frantically searched every nook and cranny and found an old library card clutched tightly in her hand. She rushed straight to the public library. Following her memory, Mai quickly found the book with the same code as in the message. Flipping through the pages, she paused before the neatly written message addressed specifically to her. The message, affirming that no matter how cold or indifferent she might seem, Minute would always be Jun's only and most important friend, moved Mai deeply. Mai continued flipping through the pages and discovered another carefully hidden piece of paper, on which lay a few painful secrets, stating that every time she closed her eyes, Min's image would reappear like an indelible haunting. Reading those desperate words, Mai was both shocked and choked up. The pieces gradually pieced together, helping her realize the deep but tragic connection between herself, Minute, and June. Meanwhile, at school, the dismissal bell rang, and Kat and Lila carried Mai's forgotten bag down to the courtyard. Just then, Gankan casually walked by, called out to her, and shoved the bag into her hand, asking her to take it to the bus stop. Gankan, who was usually indifferent, immediately changed his attitude upon hearing it was Mai's bag, hugged Cuckoo, and ran off. The strange reaction left Kat and Lila staring at each other in bewilderment. Turning back to Mai, she sat huddled in a dark corner, repeatedly reading the fateful notes. It wasn't just Jun's last words, it also contained Min's confessions, detailing her agonizing torment over her friend's death. Minute even admitted to being the reason she pushed Jun to the brink. Ma sat listlessly waiting for Noddy on a bench near the pool. When Noddy finished showering, she mustered up the courage to ask directly if she had ever done anything unforgivable in the past. Taken aback by the question, Noddy paused before nodding and replying, "That single word struck me like lightning, leaving me bewildered and questioning myself." Seeing her pale face, Noddy laughed, joking that he was the real victim of her merciless beatings. The ill-timed joke left Mai with nothing but a sigh. Just then, Mai's phone lit up with a threatening message from Gankan, demanding she come to the park immediately, otherwise he would throw her bag into the lake next to it. Noddy read the entire message, and without saying a word, he snatched the phone from Mai's hand, declaring that he would take her home himself. Meanwhile, Gankan was sprawled on a park bench, waiting impatiently for Mai to arrive. Just then, Noddy stormed over, snatched the bag Gankan was using as a pillow, and without support, Gankan's head hit the bench with a resounding thud. He jumped up, bewildered, not understanding what was happening, and seeing no sign of Mai, who had left him alone. Noddy turned his back and walked straight away. Gan angrily picked up his bag, muttered curses, and went back inside. Not far away, Mai was waiting at the gate. Seeing Noti arrive with his bag, she breathed a sigh of relief and handed it back to him. Noti asked if she had become close with Gan lately. Mai frankly nodded, even praising him as funny and interesting. Hearing this, Noti's joy instantly vanished, replaced by jealousy. He directly asked, between himself and Gan, who was she closer to? Without hesitation, Mai smiled and replied, "Of course, Noti." The answer made Noti happy again. She grinned widely and waved goodbye. The next morning, on their way to class, Kat, La, and Noti caught up with Mai. As soon as they met, Kat questioned her about why she had skipped school the previous day. Noti was taken aback. Before anyone could figure out what was happening, Gan appeared, deliberately bumping Noti hard in the shoulder, then feigning a provocative apology before leaving. The whole group stood frozen, not understanding what he wanted. Meanwhile, Tia Da continued to plot her scheme, going to the restroom where the delinquent students gathered, pretending to ask if Minute, with her amnesia, could still recognize anyone. They immediately retorted sarcastically, "You can't remember anyone. Your personality changes like a completely different person." Someone also revealed that Min's handwriting had changed, gathering enough clues. Tita's eyes flashed with calculation. Without hesitation, she went straight to the classroom to find Mai, even though Mai was on the rooftop talking privately. As soon as she arrived, Tita immediately set a trap, wanting to confirm whether the person in front of her was Minute or Mai. She began to tell a vague story about Mai's past, sarcastically calling her a lowly orphan. Not stopping there, she distorted the truth, claiming that the person who meddled in other people's affairs brought trouble upon themselves, leading to a tragic end, and then, emphatically, asserted that the person was Mai. Painful memories were torn apart, bringing the story back to the past. At that time, a gentle girl named was frequently subjected to brutal abuse by TA and his group of friends. The hellish ordeal continued until Mai could no longer bear it and decided to report everything to the teacher. As a consequence, after being punished in front of the entire school, Tita felt incredibly angry and humiliated. Unwilling to accept her fate, Tita gathered her gang to find Mai. They roughly grabbed the timid girl by the hair and hurled threats at her. Challenged Mai, saying that if she dared to betray him behind his back, she should protect this timid turtle to the very end. Friendship wouldn't allow Mai to back down. She stepped forward, held her head high, and admitted that she had reported everything to the teacher, asking TA to take all the blame onto her. From that day on, Mai became his shield. Tita, bearing the brunt of Tita's group's attacks, returns to the present on the rooftop. Tita continues to fabricate stories, claiming she moved to Bangkok to escape public scrutiny after Mai's death, while also covering up her family problems. The more Mai listens, the more her expression changes, her hands clenching in anger. This only fuels Tita's suspicion, and she becomes determined to expose Mai's deception. She intensifies her attacks, using more venomous words, shouting and demanding that the truth be revealed to see if Mai is faking it or not. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Mai exploded. She glared back, her voice sharp and defiant, questioning whether TA was even human to dare slander a deceased person. She coldly reiterated her earlier statement that someone with such thoughts was truly pathetic. Hearing the familiar words, T recoiled, vaguely recognizing the person before her. In a panic, she pushed Mai away and screamed to cover her tracks, even raising her hand to slap her. Just then, Gan unexpectedly appeared, caught red-handed. Tid met Gan's icy gaze. Sensing that he knew everything, she turned pale, stammering out explanations, but to no avail. In the tense atmosphere, Mai decided to reveal her hand. She calmly disclosed that she had a twin sister living at the Prague orphanage and that the Mai Tita had just mentioned was that sister. She emphasized that she knew exactly how her sister had been abused and asserted that TA was behind it. Before leaving, Mai didn't forget to throw back a chilling declaration of war, stating that she would definitely avenge her sister. Those words left T standing still, trembling with fear. Leaving the rooftop, Mai hesitantly descended the deserted staircase, no longer needing to steel herself. The truth about Mai's death felt like 1,000 needles piercing her heart. Exhausted, she collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. In a hidden corner above, Gan silently watched, his eyes filled with deep sadness as he pieced together everything. He was certain that the girl who resembled Minute was not the real Minute. At the same time, in the principal's office, Mr. Kill arrived with Gan's withdrawal letter, shattering the imposition. The teacher loudly declared that he would keep the application form, only signing it voluntarily if Gan agreed. He insisted that he would not accept coercion, even promising to take responsibility if Gan caused any trouble. After saying this, he turned and left, leaving the principal in silence. At lunchtime, Gan again brought his food tray, intending to sit with your group. Seeing this, Tia called him over to her table to investigate. Undeterred, Gan calmly sat down opposite her. As soon as he sat down, T pressed him about whether the incident on the rooftop had been exposed, while simultaneously denying all rumors about Mai's condition. Gan merely smirked, telling her not to worry because no one would believe someone considered insane. He also coldly warned her that the person she should fear was Minute, a notoriously hot-tempered and vengeful gang leader, whom no one had ever dared to mess with without a good outcome. Back in the classroom, while everyone was quietly working on their assignments, Kat suddenly jumped up and shouted excitedly. Teacher Kiwi frowned and asked what was wrong. Kat then proudly told him that he had passed the selection process and been chosen to film a commercial. Hearing the news, the teacher's expression turned joyful, suggesting the class applaud to celebrate, and jokingly said he would call Kat up to solve a difficult problem to celebrate. That statement sent Kat plummeting from the heights of success to utter despair. After school, Mai Longthang was walking home when she sensed something was amiss. Turning around, she discovered Gan trailing behind her. When she questioned him, he vehemently denied it. Using the excuse that it was on her way, Mai immediately threatened to turn in a different direction. Gan finally confessed that he was worried about her after what happened with TAA. Understanding his sincerity, Mai smiled reassuringly, saying she would handle everything herself and hoped he would respect her decision. Gan nodded and quietly left. Meanwhile, Tita was devising a new plan to expose Mai. She called a friend in Brackenbury, asking them to find a sample of Mai's handwriting. At the same time, Noddy arrived home only to be stunned to see his father being aggressively hounded by a woman demanding payment of a debt. Seeing his father, Little Kui felt heartbroken and decided to act. Putting aside his hesitation, he called an acquaintance in the entertainment industry and accepted an advertising offer he had previously refused. That night, Mai texted Noddy, asking him to meet her at the library. Upon meeting, she got straight to the point, asking him to recall every detail about June. Noddy explained that Minute and Jun had been close friends since elementary school, remaining close until high school. Beyond that, he didn't know anything more because Minute had never shared anything further. Meanwhile, during a family meal, Pale's mother inquired about the new music student who had transferred in, then pressured Pale into saying that if Pale were inferior to that country kid, she would feel humiliated. Pale, trembling, argued that effort was more important than the result. Hearing this, his mother became furious because Pale's performance directly affected the reputation of her tutoring class. Early the next morning, Tia sneaked into the classroom before anyone else arrived and secretly stole Mai's notebook. Just as her hand touched the notebook, footsteps startled her. Vale unexpectedly walked in from the doorway. Despite being caught red-handed, Tia maintained a nonchalant expression, cleverly fabricating a lie that she had only come to class early to look for an item she had accidentally misplaced. Having covered her tracks, she nonchalantly tucked the notebook into her clothes and quickly strode out to escape. Finding a secluded corner, she smugly took out the stolen notebook and began examining each stroke of the handwriting. Comparing it to the photo of Mraken Buri's handwriting that had just been sent, her suspicions were indeed well-founded. Min's current handwriting and Mai's handwriting from the past matched perfectly. The scene shifts to another setting, where Kat is complaining about work to her group of friends. She frowned at the hassle of having to apply for leave from school to go shoot a commercial for a brand. In the middle of their conversation, Gan suddenly appeared, casually walking over to Kat's group's table. Without any formality, he nonchalantly reached for some snacks, shoved them into his mouth, and chewed noisily, looking as if he'd just been starving. Unfortunately, a little while later, Tia happened to walk past the area. The moment Gan caught sight of her, he decided to tease her, deliberately clearing his throat and speaking loudly so she could hear every word. He casually asked Kat's friends if anyone in the group had ever experienced the taste of love. After a while of beating around the bush, he suddenly lowered his voice and hinted that he held a shocking secret, ready to share it with everyone. Tid, who was walking by, froze upon hearing those veiled remarks. Her whole body trembled with fear, and she frantically ran off, disappearing from sight towards Kat. Meanwhile, while elegantly dressed and preparing for a photo shoot, she unexpectedly encountered an acquaintance. It turned out Noddy had also been invited by the brand to be a model there. Caught off guard, CT couldn't help but exclaim how small the world truly is. However, Her excitement was quickly dampened by the unfair treatment she received throughout the photo shoot. While Noddy was constantly surrounded and pampered by the entire crew like a top-tier star, Kat was left neglected, standing alone in a corner with a sad expression. She felt disheartened realizing she was completely insignificant, with no important role in the project. The worst part was when the crew members couldn't even remember her name, only calling her Noddy. And to make matters worse, the photographer was critical, constantly scolding her for her stiff poses, failing to meet her daughter's requirements. The sharp, cutting words pierced Kat's self-esteem, causing her to force a smile while posing for the camera, tears welling up in her eyes. Witnessing all this, Noddy remained silent, offering words of encouragement with warm eyes. Back at school, T, with a furious expression, went straight to Mai. Upon meeting her, she roughly grabbed Mai's hand and dragged her along. Gan Khan witnessed the scene from a distance. He intended to intervene but, in his haste, bumped hard into Goonie. Normally, Gan Khan would have been furious. But today, he acted strangely. Instead of getting angry, he lowered his voice and profusely apologized, even thoughtfully brushing the dust off Goonie's shirt. That unusual behavior left Goonie speechless, her mouth agape, not understanding what was happening. Meanwhile, after Mai and T pulled her aside to a secluded corner, Tita began her deceitful antics, rambling on about the scandals at her old school. She shamelessly used cunning words to play the victim, falsely claiming that she was the one who had been framed and harmed by Mai. Then she made a deal, asking them both to bury the secret, to keep it forever between them. Faced with such blatant defiance, Mai resolutely refused, claiming she needed more time to think. Seeing that Mai wasn't easily manipulated, Tita immediately dropped her mask and got straight to the point. She pressed Mai, questioning her about whether she was hiding a shocking secret, then issued an ultimatum. They should treat each other like strangers. She promised to keep her past a secret, in exchange for Mai not revealing her secrets. To add weight to her threat, she deliberately emphasized the name mix-up, adding a chilling warning. Those words left Mai speechless, and she didn't relent, even taunting her that no one would trust a liar. Faced with the insults, Mai could only grit her teeth and endure, her eyes reddening. Meanwhile, Gan Khan, still hiding in a corner, had overheard the entire conversation and could no longer tolerate it. He stepped out, his cold gaze fixed on Tita, pointing directly at her. Gan Khan sternly questioned why she had to cover up the truth. He challenged her to tell the whole school everything. He demanded that Mai be allowed to speak up and say that she had a twin sister, while TA should proudly recount her exploits of bullying her friends, even to the point of forcing the victims to commit suicide to expose her transfer to another school just to evade responsibility and whitewash her past with a carefree attitude. He concluded that if T didn't dare speak, he would speak for her. Hit where it hurt, Tia Da was speechless, her face turning deathly pale. In her panic, she could only manage to blurt out that private matters didn't concern outsiders like Gan Khan. Then, fuming, she ran away, escaping from Tar. Mai stood stunned, all her pent-up emotions erupting into choked sobs. Caught in a whirlwind of tragedy, she felt trapped, not knowing what to do to escape. Music. The scene shifts back to the studio, where Noddy is sitting in the VIP area surrounded and pampered by the crew, a stark contrast to Kat, who sits alone eating a cheap lunchbox. Noticing this, Noddy immediately stands up, leaves the celebrity area, picks up his own tray of food, walks over to Kat, sits down beside him, and loudly declares that he will eat with his friend. Looking at Kat's meal, Noddy couldn't hide his indignation at the discriminatory treatment. Kat's lunchbox only contained bland white rice with no side dishes, while his own tray was full of nutritious food. Without saying much, he decisively swapped his meal with Kat's. That action made Kat's eyes widen in surprise, mixed with emotion. When the stressful photo shoot finally ended, Noddy walked home with Kat. Along the way, Kat continued to lament about the humiliation she had just experienced. She felt dejected, considering herself useless, lacking the talent or beauty to pursue a career as a celebrity. Listening to her self-doubt, Noddy didn't mock her but gently offered sincere words of comfort. He hoped these words of encouragement would help Kat Vuk recover, regain her confidence, and smile. That evening, Gan Khan proactively escorted Mai all the way home. Upon arrival, he understandingly urged her to go inside and rest. He knew she was exhausted both physically and mentally because of the troubles caused by T. Just as Gan Khan turned to leave, Noddy arrived. Seeing him standing in front of Mai's house, the jealousy in Noddy immediately flared up. He stormed over, angrily questioning Gan Khan about his business. Gan Khan remained nonchalant, even mockingly taunting him. He sternly warned Noddy to be less nosy, to stop calling Mai out late at night, emphasizing that she was exhausted and needed rest. Hearing this, Noddy's anxiety intensified. But Gan coldly declared that this was Mai's private matter, none of his business. With that, Gan turned and walked away. Left behind, Noddy quickly pulled out his phone and texted Mai. A barrage of questions poured in, but all he received in return was absolute silence. The next morning, as my Gan and Kat's group of friends walked through the school gate, they immediately saw TA standing with her prosecutor father, chatting animatedly with the principal. Witnessing this, Gan couldn't hide his contempt. The school bell rang, and Teacher Kill entered with a stern expression, instructing everyone to rearrange their seats according to their assigned positions. Ironically, Gan was assigned to sit at the same table as Noddy. As soon as his name was called, he immediately asked to switch seats. But Mr. Koo firmly refused, so the two reluctantly sat down, their backs completely to each other like two sulking children. That scene gave Mr. Kill a terrible headache. In contrast to the tense atmosphere, Tita was assigned to sit with Kat and Mai's group. This musical arrangement only added to Mai's frustration. During lunchtime, the students at the back of the classroom excitedly showed off the cover photo of a fashion magazine featuring Noddy and Kat. They vied with each other to praise Noddy's beauty and charisma, but at the same time, they didn't forget to criticize Kat, saying she was just a backdrop to highlight others. The whole group burst into laughter, just as the director walked by and overheard the entire insulting remark. She froze, a wave of self-pity washing over her. She stood rooted to the spot, not knowing what to do. Sitting amidst the crowd, Goonie saw her but still wouldn't let up, deliberately raising his voice to tease her, even making a face to provoke her in an unbearable way. Kat burst into tears, turned around, and ran out of the classroom, telling Lila not to chase after her. Witnessing all this, TA immediately seized the opportunity, quickly running after Kat. Catching up to her as she hid in a corner crying, she played along, using sweet words to comfort her. She told TDB that with her beauty, Kat would sooner or later shine and become a famous star. She insisted that, in her eyes, Kat was the most beautiful and charismatic girl in the class. To increase credibility, she even fabricated a story about how she herself had felt insecure when she first transferred schools and didn't dare to strike up a conversation with Kat. While saying this, she held Kat's hand and advised her not to let malicious words affect her. She confidently asserted that Kat would succeed and silence those who were gossiping. However, Kat still sighed sadly, admitting that she had lost all confidence after the recent shock. Sensing her vulnerability, TA played her trump card. She lured Kat into an audition organized by her uncle's entertainment company, boasting that he was the director of a record label and was preparing to recruit trainees for a new girl group. She said that because she trusted T, she reserved this VIP spot for Kat. Hearing those promises, Kat's face immediately lit up. She felt incredibly grateful that T had given her this opportunity. And with just a few manipulative tricks, T successfully trapped her, her mood elated. She proactively called Mai and Lila to go out for pastries to cheer herself up, happily announcing that she had regained her spirits. While the three girls were chatting, Tita suddenly appeared and asked to sit with them. This appearance stunned Mai, who frowned in confusion. She leaned closer to Kat and whispered, asking when the two of them had become so close, while also not hiding her displeasure. Noticing this, Tita immediately resorted to trickery, turning to look at Kat with a hurt expression, hinting that she wasn't welcome. Seeing the music, Kat quickly tried to explain, but before she could finish, Mai angrily stood up, grabbed her bag, and left the cafe. Noddy saw this and chased after her, leaving Kat and Lila bewildered. Taking advantage of the situation, Teep continued to play the victim, sobbing and saying that Mai hated her and that she didn't understand what she had done wrong. Believing in her vulnerability, Kat comforted her, advising her not to worry. Meanwhile, Noddy ran outside to find Mai. When he caught up, breathless, he asked what he had done to provoke such a strong reaction from her. Faced with such concern, Mai distanced herself, bowing her head and saying that she had things she couldn't talk about and couldn't reveal. The cold rejection left Noddy feeling disappointed and disheartened. Jealousy flared up inside him, and Noddy resentfully wondered why, as childhood friends, Mai couldn't be honest with him. His resentment intensified when he remembered her openly laughing with Gan, overwhelmed by jealousy. Noddy left in a fit of anger. The next morning, school life resumed. Mai was chatting with Layla when she was suddenly drawn to T and Kat walking hand in hand. Seeing this, Layla leaned closer to Mai and whispered that T had taken Kat to an audition, which was why the two were inseparable. Hearing this, Mai's face darkened. She quietly waited outside the girls' restroom to ambush Kat. When Kat came out, she still looked sulky about what happened yesterday. Mai proactively lowered her voice to coax her until she calmed down. As soon as they made up, Mai immediately changed to a serious tone and questioned her thoroughly about the audition. She inquired whether Kat had checked the information about Tita's entertainment company and warned her to be very careful because Tita was not a good person. Unfortunately, that advice didn't sit well with Kat. Feeling insulted, she immediately became angry, loudly defending TA and criticizing Mai for being prejudiced. Kat even questioned what TA had done to make Mai hate her so much. Unable to control herself, Kat spoke harshly, telling Mai to shut up because she didn't want to hear any more bad things about her benefactor. Then she angrily stormed off, leaving behind a suffocating atmosphere. A moment later, T calmly emerged, beginning to evasively explain that she only wanted to help Kat pursue her dream and didn't want to argue. Mai looked directly at her, coldly warning that if T dared to harm Kat, she would never forgive her. Contrary to expectations, Tita seemed triumphant, smirking and asking in return who was the one making Kat sad and distant. The scene shifts to Noddy, who maintains his cold, wary attitude, not saying a word to Mai. Despite Mai's repeated attempts to initiate conversation, he remains indifferent, treating her as if she doesn't exist. This aloofness hurts Mai deeply. She buries her head on the desk and falls asleep in the empty classroom. Coincidentally, the homeroom teacher, Mr. Kiwi, walks by, sees her sleeping, and is startled, dropping a stack of documents. Just then, Gankan arrived and, seeing the teacher's flustered state, called out. Teacher Kiwi blushed, quickly gathered his things, and tossed them away, leaving the teacher alone. Gankan approached the teacher, silently observing him, then began to playfully tease and rouse him to wake him up. Disturbed from her sleep, Mai, still half asleep, complained that she was very tired and just wanted peace and quiet. Gankan continued talking non-stop, then suddenly changed his tone, half-jokingly saying that if he ever transferred schools, Mai would definitely be the most disappointed. The remark woke Mai up, and she widened her eyes, asking what was going on. To lighten the mood, she joked that if Gankan left, she would lose the bet. Catching on, Gankan became self-obsessed again, patting his chest and declaring that if a gem like him left, the whole school would be sad. He kept teasing and joking until Mai couldn't take it anymore and agreed to go to lunch with him. Afterward, Gankan immediately ran to find Mr. Kill to ask about the withdrawal form. The teacher smiled kindly, took out the form, and handed it back to him. Clutching the form tightly, Gankan went straight to the principal's office to confront his father. Without beating around the bush, he slammed his hand on the table and declared he wouldn't transfer schools, even challenging his father to go study on his own if he'd already prepared everything. Seeing his father's anger, he tried to intervene, making a final offer. If he was allowed to stay, he would keep the secret that he was the principal's son. Otherwise, if he was forced to stay, he would reveal everything. After saying this, he turned and left. In the classroom, the students resumed discussing an anonymous expose that had just appeared on the school forum. The article details a venomous female student who moved to Bangkok to whitewash her past, after having tormented a friend to the point of suicide. The details in the article perfectly matched the TA, making the whole class convinced that the character was indeed her. Even as public opinion was raging, Tita calmly walked into the classroom. Immediately, the students surrounded him, holding up their phones and bombarding him with questions. T, music, instantly feigned innocence and cluelessness. Just as the atmosphere became tense, Gankan calmly walked in. T turned to glare at him with a hateful look in his eyes. He was the one who had posted the embarrassing and humiliating message. She turned her back and ran out of the classroom to avoid everyone's gaze. A while later, Tita secretly texted Gankan, arranging a face-to-face meeting on the rooftop. When Gankan calmly walked to the meeting place, Tita immediately confronted him, angrily questioning whether he was involved in this terrible affair. According to her reasoning, only he and the person impersonating Minute knew all the secrets. To assert his authority, T boldly threatened that he possessed proof of Min's true identity, and arrogantly presented a draft paper with Mai's handwritten musical notes to Gankan. In response, Gankan coldly denied being behind these schemes and claimed to have no knowledge of them. Picking up the paper and carefully examining Mai's handwriting, he casually tossed it back to T with a clear, resolute tone. He boldly declared that he didn't care at all about who was impersonating whom because it had nothing to do with his life. However, his eyes suddenly turned cold as he issued a stern warning that he wouldn't let anyone get away with bothering him. And now T is the one ruining that peaceful life. Hearing this, Tita became furious, shouting and accusing Mai of deceit and trickery, simply because she saw Gan can always defending her steadfastly and without hesitation. Gan smirked and delivered a fatal blow, exposing that Tita was just playing the good guy. Hoping to gain sympathy from his friends, and having his deepest secrets exposed, T was speechless and resorted to insults and reprimands, which, in reality, offered nothing good to boast about. Maintaining his flippant and teasing attitude, he confidently asserted that he was the most skilled liar in the school. They were utterly speechless and unable to refute him further. Tita turned away in frustration, leaving Gan alone on the rooftop. He pondered, piecing together Mai's earlier cryptic confessions. Those clues seemed to point to a shocking truth. She wasn't Minute, but her real name was Mai. Suddenly understanding everything, he immediately ran off to find her. As soon as he saw her in Min's form, he hastily urged her on, and without waiting for her consent, he grabbed her hand and pulled her, running frantically out of the school gate. At that moment, Noddy, who was leaning against the wall waiting to take Mai out to eat as usual, witnessed the two of them running away hand in hand. He immediately chased after them, but was a step too late and could only helplessly watch as Gan cleverly pulled Motot onto a bus and escaped. Amidst the crowded bus, Gan turned to look directly into Mai's eyes and seriously brought up the past. He repeated her lament about the exhaustion of living under someone else's identity, deducing that someone must know her true identity. With sincere eyes, he earnestly asked permission to be that special person, and proactively called Mai by her real name. Mai was stunned and horrified, completely baffled as to how Gan had discovered this shocking secret. When they sat down to talk, she weakly denied it and insisted she was Minute. However, Gan abruptly interrupted her to frankly reveal that TA had obtained handwritten proof of her identity. Along with that, he made a very manly promise to absolutely protect her, never letting Tita have the chance to mistreat Mai again. Back in the tense atmosphere at school, Tita was desperately trying to explain herself to Kat. Wearing a pitiful mask, she claimed that the anonymous story on the forum was completely false and fabricated the reason for transferring schools as simply to follow her father's work schedule. In an attempt to completely cover up the truth, Tia cleverly argued that a prestigious school would never accept a student guilty of such a crime. Utilizing her superb acting skills, she burst into tears, pleading with Kat to trust her amidst the backlash from everyone. Naturally naive and gullible, Kat quickly softened at her deceitful words, even innocently promising to defend her friend. Without hesitation, Kat firmly grasped her music hand and led him straight into the classroom, loudly declaring in front of everyone that the baseless rumors were unfounded and challenging anyone to provide credible evidence to incriminate music. Furthermore, she aggressively threatened to take her own life if she heard anyone spreading rumors or dared to harm even a single hair on her new best friend's head. The whole class stared in bewilderment, not understanding why Tita was so blindly defending TA. Meanwhile, Lila just cowered in a corner, her face pale with fear. In the next class, the atmosphere was once again disrupted when Mr. Kill handed out the periodic test. Tita excelled, achieving the highest score in the class, surpassing even the exemplary class president, Pete. Sneaking a glance at Lila's music exam score, she quickly nudged the fish with her elbow. Both whispered in confusion, wondering why their friend's performance had plummeted so dramatically. Nevertheless, her kind friends tried to justify her, assuming that the aftereffects of her dementia had caused Mai's mental state to become unstable, leading to the unexpected result. One leisurely weekend, Mai was excitedly cycling through the park when she unexpectedly ran into Noddy. She pedaled with all her might to catch up, but unfortunately, her bike chain suddenly came off. Reluctantly stopping, she called out to Noddy and then cleverly pretended to cry and whine, begging him to fix her bike. Seeing the beautiful girl in tears, Noddy's heart softened, and he rushed over to tease her, asking if she was upset about the incident with the dog. Mai nodded repeatedly in acknowledgement, urging him to quickly roll up his sleeves and help. Seeing her adorable awkwardness, Noddy burst out laughing and carefully bent down to painstakingly reattach the leash. Thanks to that small incident, the two happily reconciled and became as close as they were at the beginning. Finding a cool corner to sit and rest, Noddy kindly advised Mai that from now on, if she ever faced difficulties, she should feel free to confide in him. She should absolutely not bottle up her anger alone. In a sincere and warm voice, he promised to always be there to protect and support her, just like before. The next morning at school, trouble arose again when TA arrogantly dragged Mai to a secluded corner to confront her, threatening her and demanding she immediately end this deceptive charade. Not one to be trifled with, Mai, with a defiant and resolute expression, retorted that she should never have been there because if she disappeared, no one would ever discover the horrifying truth that she was the one who murdered her younger sister. Hearing this, she still couldn't help but let out a contemptuous, sarcastic laugh, ceasing her act because she looked utterly pathetic. She proudly boasted that she had seen through Mai's fake identity from the very beginning. Upon entering the school, she simultaneously brought out her steel-egg certificate. Music, scoffing in response. Mai smirked, issuing a challenge to strike with steel. She confidently asserted that even if Tia brought out that rough draft, she would still be more than capable of making everyone disbelieve the deceitful words of the wicked. Mai even threatened that if she exposed the truth about her sister's wrongful death, no one would dare stand up for Tita anymore. In the midst of this heated argument, Gan Khan, once again hiding in a corner, overheard the entire conversation. Furious, Tita recounted the whole story to her parents. Details ranged from encountering a girl with a face identical to the victim's to a piece of paper with handwriting as evidence. Clinging to hope, she begged her father, a prosecutor, to use his expertise to compare the evidence. Contrary to expectations, her father flew into a rage, crumpling the paper and throwing it away. He yelled at his daughter to immediately stop this terrible act of deception, unwilling to reopen the wounds of the humiliation she had endured in Bangkok just to clean up the mess she had caused. Along with that came a stern warning. Tita had to obediently bury all her memories if she wanted to live in peace. Scolded harshly, Tita could only cower and sob in fear. But surprisingly, after her anger subsided, her father secretly picked up the crumpled piece of paper, carefully examined it, and the moment he compared the two sets of handwriting and realized they were identical, his face changed color. Pang Hoang was utterly shocked. Meanwhile, at P.S. house, his mother was constantly nagging him about his grades. She even went to the trouble of calling Mr. Kill multiple times to have him recheck and regrade the papers. Hearing this, P sighed and explained that he had checked the answers himself and that the truth was he had gotten one difficult question wrong, which was why he lost 0.5 points. However, his mother stubbornly refused to accept the reality of his poor academic performance. She loudly argued that if his grades remained so low, no parent would ever trust her with their children's education again. Hearing these harsh words, P couldn't hold back his tears of hurt and sadness. He cried and sobbed, apologizing to his mother. Instead of comforting her, his mother authoritarianly punished him by forcing him to sit and do extra advanced homework for another hour before he could go to bed. Before turning and leaving the room, she curiously inquired about the grades of the new transfer student, Tita. However, feeling overwhelmed by the pressure, Pale stubbornly remained silent and refused to speak up. The following day, at an important parent-teacher meeting, Pale's mother brought up the topic of grades again, expressing her dissatisfaction that her son hadn't maintained a perfect academic record. Music. Meanwhile, Tita, a new transfer student, effortlessly and spectacularly scored perfect marks. Just as she finished complaining, Tita's mother proudly walked into the meeting room, leaving Pale's mother utterly flustered and embarrassed. Despite this, Pale's mother tried to maintain her composure, reluctantly introducing the new parent to everyone. Seizing the opportunity, T's mother immediately boasted and enthusiastically encouraged other mothers to send their children to the tutoring center run by Tita's private tutor, proudly emphasizing that she was an extremely famous and reputable figure in the education field. Seeing a rival blatantly stealing her business, Pale's mother quickly spoke up to defend her territory. She emphatically asserted that she had always been solely responsible for managing the tutoring group, then slyly remarked that the educational environment in Bangkok was undoubtedly superior and far beyond that of the lower-class provinces. Tanner's mother immediately countered, proudly citing Tanner's achievements as the clearest proof. He was the only student to excel and top the class. This sharp conclusion seemed to strike a chord with the achievement-seeking mentality of all the mothers present. She began to show interest and enthusiasm in having her child study with the same tutoring group as Tina. Faced with this brutal collective rejection, Pale's mother felt utterly humiliated and ashamed, so angry that she gritted her teeth. Moving on to the English lesson, the teacher assigned a presentation, asking students to share memorable experiences from their field trip to Brackenbury. Recently, with the group list randomly arranged beforehand, ironically, Goonie, Noddy, and Gun Khan were drawn into the same group. This unfortunate pairing left all three feeling extremely frustrated and helpless. This was because Goonie and Noddy hadn't even participated in the field trip, and Goonie was an extremely poor English student. Feeling desperate, Goonie came up with a dark idea, suggesting the group pool their money to hire someone to do the work. Hearing about this easy solution, Gan Khan and Noddy readily agreed. As for Mai, she was assigned to work with Goonie's girlfriend. When they started working, Mai sat and reviewed all the commemorative photos taken during that fateful camping trip. She kept scrolling until she suddenly stopped at a class photo. Just before Minute was reported missing under her current false identity, M suddenly recoiled in horror when she accidentally zoomed in on the photo and clearly saw her own face lurking in the background. On the weekend, Lila La and Pale arranged to meet at a cafe in the shopping mall to work on their group English assignment. When Pale asked where Kat was, Lila La could only sigh and reply that her friend was busy with something and would join them later. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Lila La glanced outside and was stunned to see Kat strolling down the street, laughing and chatting intimately with Tar. That image of betrayal left Lila's heart aching and deeply wounded. After enduring a long time working on her homework with Pale, Kat finally arrived. Kat feigned innocence, announcing she had just finished a personal matter, then tried to break the silence with playful banter. However, Lila's response was a cold, uncommunicative expression. La even angrily demanded that Kat play some pranks to disrupt her concentration on her assignment. This unusually harsh reaction surprised Kat. Meanwhile, Pale, sitting in the middle and sensing the tension, quickly intervened, proactively suggesting that the group divide up the work to meet the deadline. She relied on her relatively good English skills. Kat quickly accepted the presentation task and nonchalantly pushed the PowerPoint slide design onto Lila. Lila reluctantly nodded in agreement. Lila, with a bitter tone, turned to Kat and asked a question full of hidden meaning: whether Kat had ever shown respect or sought her opinion before making a decision. She reproached Kat for always being autocratic and making decisions without considering other people's feelings. Taken aback by this fierce resistance, Kat frowned and questioned what was wrong with Lila today, threatening to cut off all contact if she didn't explain the reason, feeling both angry and hurt. Lila sarcastically retorted that Kat now had new friends and didn't need an unwanted person like her anymore. Leaving behind those heartless words, Lila angrily stood up and stormed off. Kat stood there bewildered, not understanding what had just happened, and turned to Pale for an explanation. Kat only received a cold silence when he urged her to sit down and finish her assignment. Meanwhile, Mai, in Min's guise, proactively arranged a private meeting with Nin. As soon as Nin arrived, Mai immediately got straight to the point, seriously questioning her about the suspicious events that occurred just before the picnic. She focused particularly on the details of the phone call that night and the strange message she received from Jun. Hearing the story repeated, Nin paused, trying to remember, then slowly recounted the whole story. She explained that on the night before her departure, she was in a state of extreme panic and fear. Trembling, she called Minute to ask her to meet up. At the time, Minute was confused and pressed her for the reason Nin had sent that strange message. However, Nin vehemently denied it, insisting that the message was sent directly from Jun's phone number. Hearing this, Minute became suspicious, questioning Nin that if she was truly so afraid, why did she willingly go along with such a terrible thing on that fateful day? Minute also confessed that she had just received a message with the exact same content. Unable to believe in such outlandish ghost stories, Nin loudly asserted that she had passed away long ago, and therefore a dead person absolutely could not send text messages. This statement left Minute speechless. Weeping bitterly, she desperately confessed that Jun's spirit constantly haunted and tormented her mind. Returning to the present, and I solemnly assured Mai that, to this day, no one had yet uncovered the real culprit behind those ghostly messages. Seizing the opportunity, Mai directly asked about the true reason behind Jun's death. After a moment of contemplation, Nin shook her head and said that no one knew the exact cause, because by the time it was discovered, the body had been lying cold for more than 2 days. Even more frightening, she revealed shocking information. Minute had previously hated Jun intensely. The more Mai, music, listened to her story, the deeper her mind sank into utter confusion and bewilderment. The next morning, at school, the mischievous students were being reprimanded by their teacher for violating school rules by wearing skirts that were too short. In the midst of this tense situation, a beautiful and stylish female in turn stepped out of a luxury car, ironically also wearing a short, revealing skirt. She walked in and sweetly asked for directions to the 5/3 classroom. At the same time, inside the classroom, the unruly students rushed in excitedly, eagerly announcing the shocking news that this year's student teacher was an incredibly attractive woman. This good news caused the male students to immediately cheer loudly with joy. The commotion only subsided when Mr. Kyo, with his imposing presence, entered and sternly ordered everyone to settle down. Once order was restored, he introduced the new student teacher, May, who was in charge of mathematics. After the young teacher's charming self-introduction, The male students in the class immediately started playing all sorts of funny games to try and flirt with her. Amidst the boisterous laughter of the class, teacher Mai unexpectedly turned to look directly at Mai, who was impersonating Minute, and subtly curved her lips into a mysterious smile. After school, as Mai was leisurely walking home, T's father happened to drive by and caught sight of her encountering an old acquaintance. He suddenly remembered the crazy story his daughter had told him, that Mai, the student whom TA had brutally abused at her old school, had clearly died long ago. Reacting to this absurd scene, T's father fell into a state of utter bewilderment and astonishment. He was completely unable to understand why someone who was supposed to be dead was still alive and well. Even now, she's nonchalantly attending this very school. In the evening, Noddy resumed his habit of secretly hiding in front of the house gate to spy on what Mai, in her Minute persona, was doing. Just then, Mai texted him from inside the house, asking where he was. Upon receiving the message, Noddy was startled and panicked, quickly retreating to a secluded corner behind the house to hide. Because he was so afraid that Mai would discover his stalking and voyeurism, he even frantically texted a lie, saying he was standing outside Zim's gym. After reading the message, Mai replied that she would walk there to find him immediately. That statement terrified Noddy, and he immediately ran headlong, as if being chased by a ghost, towards the school's gym. Upon arriving, he quickly adjusted his breathing, pretending to stroll leisurely out the door. Sure enough, less than 3 seconds later, Mai was walking to the meeting point. After that brief encounter, the two happily went to Noddy's house for dinner. That meal was even more cozy with the presence of Noddy's father. While eating, Mai casually picked up her chopsticks, intending to put a piece of carrot into her mouth. Seeing that strange sight, Noddy's eyes widened in surprise as he questioned her. According to his memory, Minute was an extremely picky eater and had never touched carrots before. The sudden question startled Mai, who was terrified that her imposter had been exposed. In her embarrassment, she hastily tried to cover it up by pretending to ask what her favorite food was. Without a hint of suspicion, Noddy excitedly rattled off details of Min's eating preferences, listing her favorite dishes and, especially, those she absolutely hated. After a delicious dinner, the two went for a walk in the park to enjoy the fresh air. While engrossed in conversation, Mai accidentally slipped and nearly fell into the lake. Noddy, quick-witted and agile, grabbed her arm and pulled her back. In that brief moment of contact, he noticed a rather large scar on her arm and, curious, asked about it. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Mai blurted out that she had suffered a very painful bicycle accident at the age of 50. This answer immediately sowed a great deal of doubt in Noddy's heart. Initially, he inquired whether her memory was gradually recovering, but he soon exposed the fatal flaw. In reality, that part of her memory was completely inaccurate, because he was the one driving the bicycle that day. After a series of absurd events that had recently occurred, Noddy began to feel utterly bewildered about the true identity of the girl standing before him. The clear evidence made him increasingly certain that this girl bore no resemblance to his childhood friend. As for Mai, she seemed to sense that her disguise had been completely exposed. Both stood rooted to the spot, silently staring at each other amidst the suffocating atmosphere. Unable to bear the pressure any longer, Mai decided to turn her back and walk away, leaving Noddy behind. Noddy immediately chased after her, his voice harsh as he unleashed a devastating question. Was she not Minute? The questioning pierced her heart, bringing tears to Mai's eyes. She bit her lip, completely at a loss for how to respond. Seeing the tears rolling down her cheeks, Noddy's heart softened, and he gently released her hand, reassuring her not to worry about those unwarranted words. Finally, the two said their farewells with heavy hearts, each going their separate ways, returning to the tense atmosphere at Pale's house, where he was being forced by his mother to sit and diligently practice solving stacks of problems for an advanced exam. At the same time, he had to grit his teeth and endure a torrent of scolding. His father declared he absolutely did not want to see his son fall behind Tita in the test, just like the last time. Those pressure-filled words left Pale with no choice but to focus on his work, his mind consumed by stress and utter exhaustion. Meanwhile, Tita's powerful prosecutor father secretly ordered his henchmen to steal Mai's fingerprints while she was impersonating Minute. These fingerprints were immediately sent for comparison with Min's real fingerprints, which had been collected in Brainbura province. The results astonished him, as the two fingerprints matched perfectly. The accuracy of this report was even more precise than using technical measurements. Early the next morning, Noddy, feeling anxious, waited outside the school gate next to the basketball court. This was because Mai hadn't gone to the park to exercise with him as usual. As soon as he saw his friend leisurely approaching, He eagerly ran over to ask her what was wrong. However, she only offered a very lame excuse, that she had overslept. Seeing her gloomy expression and evasive gaze, Noddy sensed something was wrong. He kindly offered to go exercise with her to lift her spirits. Just then, Gankan casually walked over and interrupted their conversation, rudely asking where they were planning to go on their date and brazenly insisting on tagging along. Before either of them could respond, a stray basketball suddenly whizzed past, narrowly missing Mai with an involuntary reflex. Both Noddy and Gankan simultaneously lunged forward, shielding her with their bodies. However, Noddy was quicker than her opponent, wrapping her arms around her loved one and pulling her out of the ball's path just in time. Standing rooted to the spot, gazing at the romantic scene, Gankan felt utterly disappointed and superfluous, so he silently turned and walked away. During the lunch break, Mai proactively invited Kat to the canteen for lunch. Contrary to her enthusiasm, Kat listlessly refused, having completely lost her appetite. The underlying reason was that she was extremely depressed, faced with the repeated postponements of the audition for Uncle Ta's music project, and her growing impatience to receive any official notification. Tia Da, hearing her friend's usual sigh, hastily fabricated a flimsy excuse to reassure her, claiming that her uncle had been busy with overseas business trips lately and hadn't had time to arrange his schedule for the music project. A little while later, Mai happened to pass by and caught Tia secretly calling her powerful uncle. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Mai stormed over to confront the two-faced girl. She sternly warned that if Tia dared to do anything terrible that would hurt and disappoint her friend, she would never let her live in peace. Coincidentally, Noddy was walking right behind them. Upon noticing the audience, Tia immediately dropped her familiar act of feigning distress. Jongjia wore an expression of extreme suffering and sadness. She deliberately spoke loudly and clearly, lying so that a third party could hear. Tia loudly asserted that Mai not only impersonated Min's face but also copied her stubborn and domineering personality exactly. Not stopping there, she added a sarcastic remark, lamenting that Mai was probably so confused and bewildered at that moment that she couldn't even tell the difference herself. A mi mayor Min. After spewing out her venomous nonsense, Tia pretended to be cheerful, waved goodbye to Noddy, then arrogantly turned her back and disappeared. Noddy slowly approached, looking at Mai with a complex expression, filled with confusion and suspicion. He asked if she had just had another argument with Tia, and gently reminded her of their meeting that afternoon, carefully reminding her not to forget. Bewitched by guilt, Ma didn't dare look directly into Noddy's sincere eyes. She could only lower her head, silently turning her back and walking away quickly. During the energetic physical education class that followed, as all the students rushed onto the sports field, Tia Da suddenly clutched her stomach, grimacing and wailing, claiming she had a terrible stomachache. She asked the teacher for permission to go to the infirmary to rest. Seizing the time after the tiring class, Mai tried to find an opportunity to talk to Kat privately. She sincerely wanted to advise her friend not to blindly trust and participate in that fiery dance audition anymore. Sadly, before Mai could explain the whole story, Kat immediately showed a grumpy and extremely unpleasant attitude. Frowning intensely, Kat loudly retorted, questioning why Mai always picked fights and harbored such deep-seated prejudice against Tia. Every word she uttered showed unwavering and blind support for her new acquaintance. They were about to enter a crucial English class. While everyone was busy preparing their laptops for the presentation, Tia's expensive laptop suddenly went black. Even more suspiciously, immediately after that incident, the computers of the other two groups also malfunctioned in a completely inexplicable way. This highly malicious act enraged class leader Pale, who immediately set out to find the despicable culprit. Standing in front of the class, he sternly questioned if anyone had secretly sneaked into the classroom during PE class. Immediately, all eyes turned suspiciously towards Tia, as she was the only one who had made an excuse to linger. But CT once again played the hero, loudly and confidently asserting that Tia had simply been resting quietly in the infirmary during that entire time. Immediately after the uproar, an emergency meeting of subject teachers was convened. There, the English teacher took a very firm and resolute stance, asserting that she would immediately deduct points from the performance evaluations of all three groups whose computers malfunctioned. According to her, the fact that three computers belonging to three different groups simultaneously malfunctioned was an utterly illogical coincidence and absolutely could not have happened by chance. After listening to the entire report, the strict vice principal sternly issued an order to the homeroom teacher, demanding that Mr. Kill immediately investigate and resolve this property damage case. That afternoon, as soon as the school bell rang, Noddy excitedly went to see Mai in her minute disguise, as planned. The moment they met, he surprised her by giving her a very pretty doll, which delighted her immensely. Mai was so overjoyed that she jumped for joy, but this moment of genuine emotion inadvertently awakened a familiar memory in Na's mind. He remembered clearly that Minute had never had a liking for dolls, and even suffered from a severe allergy to dust mites, leaving him bewildered and confused. Curious, he inquired whether her old allergy had been completely cured. Hearing this, Mai paused for a moment, her radiant smile quickly replaced by a strained expression. Despite the swirling doubts in his heart, Noddy ultimately decided to give her the expensive doll. He tried to convince himself with logic, clinging to a faint glimmer of hope that perhaps after the near-fatal accident, Min's body had truly changed and she was no longer allergic. On their way to the bus stop to go home, Noddy and Mai unexpectedly ran into a brawler, a notorious male student known for his mischievous nature. At that moment, Tin Geach was leisurely waiting on the bench. As soon as he saw the two of them, Gankan casually made a teasing remark. He was lamenting that he couldn't bear it any longer because he missed Nung Minute so much. Hearing that cheesy declaration of love, Mai frowned in annoyance and curiously asked why he was still sitting there at this hour. Without any hesitation, Gankan bluntly replied that he was waiting for Minute to come home from school. Just as the bus pulled up, Noddy immediately pushed Mai quickly onto the bus, trying to force her to leave first, away from the insidious harassment of the person opposite. At the same time, Zhang Rong blocked her view with both hands, resolutely preventing Gankan from having any chance to follow her. Only after the bus had disappeared from sight did Noddy angrily turn to confront Gankan, sharply questioning his true intentions in following the lecture. In response to this hostile attitude, Gankan merely smirked, uttering a sly remark. He sarcastically remarked that if the girl had truly been Minute, he wouldn't have wasted his time caring about her at all. However, the current imposter, Minute, desperately needed his protection. That sarcastic and provocative remark truly hit the nail on the head, instantly enraging Noddy. He repeatedly questioned Gankan about what ulterior motive he was trying to imply, while emphatically asserting that there was only one person named Minute in the world. Despite Noddy's aggressive insistence on explaining the whole situation, Gankan stubbornly remained silent, refusing to utter another word. Instead, he casually advised Noddy not to waste his time worrying about his meaningless remarks. After uttering those arrogant words, Gankan coldly turned his back and walked away. The following day, Mr. Kyo sternly summoned TA to his office for questioning to clarify the truth behind the vandalism of numerous laptops in the classroom. He also showed her a security camera clip clearly showing her sneaking into the classroom during physical education class. When pressed for details about her clandestine activities, Tita stubbornly refused to cooperate, falsely claiming she had only stopped by the infirmary to rest, but due to the large number of students, she had to return to class, denying any deception. Teacher Kill sharply questioned why she dared to brazenly deceive her classmates by claiming she had been resting there. Cornered, Tia Die stammered, trying to justify herself by saying she had blurted out the lie in a panic. Meanwhile, in the back corner of the classroom, a group of unruly students huddled together, angrily scolding Kat for blindly acting as a shield to protect her. They emphatically asserted that TA was a blatant liar, claiming they had personally gone to the infirmary to question the nurse and received a firm answer that absolutely no students had entered the infirmary the previous day. Just as the story was reaching its climax, Tia Die leisurely walked in from the doorway. The group of friends immediately ganged up on her, berating her fiercely. They pointed directly at her, exposing her dark scheme and accusing her of deliberately pulling this dirty trick because her computer was broken, driven by selfish fear that other groups would easily complete the assignment and achieve higher scores. Having sat quietly listening to everything, Dad immediately stood up, walked straight over, and confronted Tita directly, asking if she was also secretly taking his notebook. Despite Tita's stubborn attitude and loud denials, the group of rebellious friends didn't give her a chance to react or offer any further excuses. They rushed forward, snatched the school bag, and searched it. In just a few short seconds, Mai's familiar notebook fell with a thud onto the floor. Before everyone's astonished eyes, and faced with undeniable evidence, the entire class unanimously demanded that she honestly admit whether she was the one who had damaged the other group's computers, because her secretly stealing the notebook had become an undeniable fact. Even so, T shamelessly denied all guilt and angrily stormed out of the classroom. Seeing this, Mai, disguised as Minute, secretly followed her to confront her. Meanwhile, Noddy secretly followed and hid in a nearby corner, listening to the situation. Catching up with Tita, Minute looked directly into her face with a cold, sharp gaze and asked if she had finally understood the pain her sister had felt, or the humiliation of being cruelly ganged up on. Hearing those taunts, Tia immediately lost her temper, spewing vulgar insults, arrogantly asserting that she knew no fear, and continued to argue vehemently about the computer sabotage, unable to tolerate such insolence any longer. Minute swung her hand and delivered a resounding slap to teach the girl a lesson she'd never forget, then coldly turned her back and walked away without looking back. But the moment she turned, she was shocked to come face to face with Noddy, who had silently witnessed the entire incident from beginning to end. Mai froze, her whole body stiff with fear as Noddy stared at her and threw out a shocking question, questioning whether it was true that she had a younger sister. With her throat constricted, Ma was completely unable to utter any explanation. Seeing her flustered and confused expression, Noddy took the initiative to soften her tone and cover up, "Perhaps I misheard." The next day, Mr. Kill carefully took the broken computers to the repair shop, asking the technicians to thoroughly check them. The results came back to the professor, who was extremely surprised when the technician concluded that the TA group's computer had actually had a hardware failure from the start. As for the other two groups' computers, a hacker had deliberately wiped out their Windows operating systems. Professor Kill shared this speculation with the new trainee teacher. He concluded that it was very likely because he discovered his own computer was genuinely broken. Tita, consumed by jealousy, secretly deleted the operating system from her classmates' computers, fearing they would easily score higher marks on the exam. However, the teacher decided to keep this a secret, hoping to have a private conversation with the student before imposing formal disciplinary action. In another development, Ta's powerful father secretly showed her the handwriting analysis results he had sent for authentication. The report clearly stated that both sets of handwriting were indeed from the same person. Armed with this valuable information, Tita immediately smirked maliciously, a cruel plan beginning to take shape in her mind. The next morning at school, without hesitation, she thrust the eggshell-thin paper directly into Mai's face. With a sarcastic and venomous tone, she mocked Mai, saying she must be utterly exhausted from having to put on a show and deceive everyone every day. Then, Tia brazenly threatened Mai, forcing her to choose between two harsh paths. Either they both exposed the truth to the entire school, or she remained silent in exchange for Mai immediately withdrawing from the school and leaving permanently. After hearing those ridiculous threats, Mai immediately responded with unwavering determination. She strongly asserted that she would absolutely not leave and would resolutely stay to face everything. She crumpled the piece of paper into a ball and threw it directly at Tita's face, then proudly turned and walked away, exuding an unyielding and unwavering confidence. Humiliated right in front of him, Tita was so enraged that he immediately pulled out his phone and sent a text message to Noddy. Attached to it was a series of old photos of Mai. From her dirty days at the orphanage to her old school ID photos, the sudden arrival of this shocking information and images left Noddy utterly stunned. She stood speechless, dumbfounded. Just then, Noddy's phone rang. A matchmaker, posing as Minute, called to arrange a meeting. When they met at the meeting point, neither spoke a word. Both were enveloped in a heavy silence, walking silently side by side with their minds filled with conflicting thoughts. After a long while, Ma finally mustered the courage to break the suffocating atmosphere with a soft confession that her memory had actually returned a long time ago. Hearing this, Noddy responded in an extremely cold and distant tone, saying that he was very happy about it. Without beating around the bush, he went straight to the point, asking if Minute was actually Mai. Hitting a nerve, Mai could only bite her lip in silence, lowering her head to the ground, letting tears of self-pity stream down her cheeks. Seeing her weak, evasive demeanor, Noddy found the cruel answer for himself. He painfully realized that the girl standing before him was definitely not his childhood friend Minute, because Minute would never shy away from such direct questions. The prolonged silence was finally broken when Mai could no longer hold back. She burst into tears, sobbing and repeatedly apologizing. Seeing her cry, Noddy also felt heartbroken and tears streamed down his face. Even so, he bitterly questioned whether she had heartlessly deceived him and manipulated his feelings all this time. But Mai could only stand there, frozen, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to utter a single explanation or satisfactory answer. Her silence only further disappointed Noddy, who loudly demanded that she immediately speak up and give a clear explanation. In the midst of this extremely tense situation, Gankan suddenly rushed forward, grabbing Mai's hand and leading her away. In a fit of rage, Noddy absolutely refused to be outdone, immediately grabbing Mai's other arm and pulling her towards herself. Seeing this, Gankan glared fiercely, signaling to her rival to stop, then let go of Mai's arm and turned to protect her, telling Mai not to do anything against her wishes. However, Mai resolutely refused to listen, insisting that she must personally tell Noddy the whole truth. Hearing that firm affirmation, Noddy slowly lowered his hand. He was now 100% certain this person wasn't Minute. At the same time, Mai decisively pushed Gan Kan's hand away, gently advising him to go home so she could handle her own affairs. His heart heavy at Vu Fang's rejection, Gan Kan turned and left with a sad expression on his face. Even though his genuine feelings for this girl were just as deep as Noddy's, as soon as the guard's figure disappeared from view, Mai slumped into a chair, exhausted, trying to regain her composure before beginning to reveal the shocking truth. She sincerely confessed that her real name was Mai, not Minute, and continuously wept, apologizing for all the terrible lies and deception she had caused. Unexpectedly, halfway through the story, Noddy suddenly gestured for her to stop, looking at her with eyes filled with deep confusion and hurt. He choked out a reproachful remark, saying his mind was currently too confused and he needed more time to think things through and accept everything. Without giving Mai a chance to stop him, Noddy immediately stood up, turned his back, and walked away, heartlessly leaving the little girl sobbing on the park bench, looking utterly miserable, as if she had just experienced a terrible emotional shock. The next day, Noddy decided to skip school and stay home. As soon as Mai, music, stepped out of the classroom, Tita immediately surrounded him, gloating and mocking his unusual absence. She maliciously taunted him, suggesting that the young master must be heartbroken and devastated. After being cruelly betrayed by the person she trusted completely, and having spewed out those venomous taunts, Tita swaggered away. Meanwhile, Noddy put aside his studies to investigate the truth himself. Driving straight to Min's mother's business, he didn't beat around the bush but seriously and directly asked Mrs. Kwan about Min's current whereabouts. This sudden and sharp question stunned Mrs. Kwan, leaving her utterly bewildered and unable to understand how this young man knew such a deep secret about her family. Back at school, Tita's uncle, the director of her record label, called to officially confirm the audition date and time for Kat. As soon as she hung up, Tita acted incredibly kind and enthusiastic, showering Kat with sweet words of encouragement to do her best. Being naive, Kat was completely unaware of the terrible things being orchestrated behind her back, only profusely thanking her new friend for her wholehearted help. At lunchtime, Mai trudged up to the stadium stands and sat alone. Suddenly, Gan Kan, nicknamed the slightly eccentric one, appeared. He casually plopped down beside her, cheerfully striking up a conversation as usual. He even thoughtfully ordered food from a shop near the school gate and set it out for them to share. Seeing how kind and forgiving Gan Kan always was towards her, Mai couldn't help but feel guilty. She hesitantly asked if he hated her for having heartlessly deceived everyone's feelings for so long. Hearing this, Gan Kan didn't answer directly, but instead kindly put food into her bowl, reminding her to eat quickly before it got cold and lost its flavor. That thoughtful, sensitive, and sincere attention helped Mai feel comforted and happy again, secretly thinking to herself that Gan Kan was truly a very warm and kind young man. Elsewhere, in his private office, Professor Kill sternly called Palin for a talk. The teacher delivered the bad news that the repair shop had confirmed the results. Only one computer had malfunctioned naturally, while the others were deliberately vandalized. Hearing this, Pale panicked and asked what kind of disciplinary action the school would take if he confessed to being the culprit. Although he questioned him, the boy stubbornly denied doing anything wrong. Seeing through his student's pretense with a stern gaze, Teacher Kyo used profound words to teach him a moral lesson. Teacher Kyo thoughtfully explained that when people make mistakes, by the time they realize their error and want to correct it, sometimes all opportunities for redemption have already passed too late. The next day, Kat nervously went to the entertainment company for the audition as scheduled. There, she confidently showcased her singing and dancing talents exceptionally well. Her performance was so impressive that all the judges in the audience were wide-eyed with astonishment, applauding Noddy enthusiastically. At that moment, he was sitting in the shop, listening as the old woman recounted the whole story. She wept as she recounted in detail his unhappy childhood, how he had been cruelly mistreated by his bad friends, and the deeper reasons why she loved him so much and decided to adopt him. It all stemmed from a long-standing connection between the two sisters. Then, the music woman revealed her intention to transfer Mai to a better school, urgently asking Noddy to keep the secret and not reveal it to anyone. After a moment of silence, Noddy tearfully inquired about Min's current whereabouts. Mrs. Guan reluctantly revealed the heartbreaking truth. The remains of the poor girl were being kept at a quiet temple in Brackenbura province. Those words brought tears to both Mrs. Kwan and Noddy's eyes, a wave of sorrow washing over them. They were overwhelmed with grief. As night fell, Mai could only sit silently in a corner of the room, staring blankly at Min's photos and reminiscing about the past. The next morning, at dawn, she resolutely slung her backpack over her shoulder, took a bus to the station, bought a ticket, and headed straight to Prashingbu. Upon arriving, the first thing Mike did was buy a bouquet of flowers and place it on her sister's tombstone, carrying the precious gold medal Noddy had given her. She carefully hung it on her sister's grave, because deep down she believed that the person Noddy truly loved and wanted to give this medal to was Minute, not her. After offering flowers and incense, my Tinko noticed a small photograph of Tun Cow left on the grave. On the back of the photo were carefully written words, awkwardly expressing the overwhelming longing and sorrow of her younger brother. That sincere emotion made Mai's nose sting, and tears welled up. While standing there, lost in thought before the tombstone, Mai unexpectedly saw the familiar figures of Jay and little Tun Cow walking to pay their respects. She quickly stepped back, hiding behind the door to observe, watching the two of them embrace and sob uncontrollably, overwhelmed by their longing for her. Fortunately, she couldn't hold back her surging emotions any longer. Unbeknownst to her, in another hidden corner, Noddy was also quietly observing the entire scene from a distance, her gaze incredibly complex. Returning to the events at the school, when Pale's mother stormed into the teacher's room to talk to Mr. Kill about the broken computer, Mr. Kiwi made a surprising conclusion. Pale's computer actually only had a common hardware malfunction due to prolonged use. Meanwhile, the other students' computers showed signs of having their Windows operating systems deliberately deleted by a malicious individual. Upon hearing this, Pale's mother immediately started arguing loudly, defiantly declaring that if Mr. Killu didn't have concrete evidence, he absolutely shouldn't make false accusations against her beloved son. After the heated argument, she angrily went home. As soon as she arrived, she immediately questioned whether her son had damaged his classmates' computers, or if Mr. Killu, out of ill will, had deliberately misunderstood the accusations. Pale, frightened, could only stand silently, sobbing, not daring to utter a word in reply. Seeing his cowardly and evasive attitude, she angrily slapped him lightly on the cheek. That slap was like a wake-up call, instantly making her realize the harsh truth. This mistake was undoubtedly caused by her precious son. But instead of scolding him, she blindly embraced Pale, comforting him and telling him that since Teacher Kill didn't have any evidence, he absolutely must not confess anything. Afterward, she urged her daughter to take a bath and get clean, then sit down at her study desk to reply. P still maintained a sullen expression, remaining completely silent. The next morning, Mai Lomo woke up in bed, feeling deeply moved to see that Mrs. Kwan had stayed up all night. Seeing her adopted daughter awake, she rushed over to check her forehead, feeling that the fever was still raging. Her mother kindly advised Mai to take a day off from school to rest. However, Mai was extremely stubborn and resolutely refused to listen to her mother's advice. In class, Mr. Kill stood at the podium and mentioned the case of tracking down the computer vandal. He frankly admitted that they had not yet gathered clear evidence to identify the culprit. Hearing this, the group of troublemakers at the back of the class started whispering and gossiping again. They were absolutely certain that TA was behind all this terrible thing. Despite Mr. Killu's shouts to stop the baseless rumors, the students ignored him. Tita sat huddled at her desk, trembling with fear, biting her lip tightly, not daring to utter a word of protest. Finally, Mr. Killu sternly announced that the culprit had 2 days to voluntarily confess her wrongdoing. The teacher, being considerate, offered a way out, saying that if the person was too scared to meet the music in person, they could call or text anonymously. He promised to find the gentlest and most amicable way to resolve the issue. After saying these words of reassurance, he turned and left the classroom. However, the group of troublemakers stubbornly continued to pressure him, constantly making sarcastic remarks. They urged her to quickly go and confess today, instead of wasting time waiting for the 2-day deadline. Overwhelmed by such harsh words, Tita couldn't bear it any longer and ran out of the classroom. As for Mai, because she stubbornly went to school despite having a high fever, her body started to feel burning hot and extremely uncomfortable. When she was completely exhausted and couldn't hold on any longer, she collapsed onto the table. While Mai lay weakly resting on the hospital bed, Gankan stealthily pushed open the door and entered. Approaching her, he teased her, asking if she was really sick or just faking it to skip class. Too tired, Mai only mumbled a few words, weakly waving Gankan away to go back to class. Seeing her frail appearance, the boy continued his teasing, making up a flimsy excuse that he was also very ill, then casually walked to the empty bed next to her and lay down. Resting his chin on his hand, he began to stare intently at Mai's pale face. Meanwhile, Noddy remained extremely worried about her health. Lam Louis stood lurking outside the infirmary door, peeking inside with a pained look in his eyes, but he lacked the courage to step inside. After afternoon classes, the student teacher thoughtfully went to the infirmary to check on Mai, asking if she felt any better. She also enthusiastically advised Mai to feel free to share any difficulties she might have. After the conversation, everyone happily said goodbye and went home. As soon as the school bell rang, Mai was waiting for her car in front of the school gate when, unexpectedly, Jun's mother arrived in a luxurious car. The car window rolled down, and a voice called out Mei's name. Even more surprisingly, Mei happily responded with a very affectionate mom. The shocking truth was officially revealed. The beautiful trainee teacher named Mei was Jun's biological sister. The next morning, harboring a new, sinister plot, Tita proactively sought out Noddy, suggesting a private conversation about Mei's situation. Intrigued, Noddy immediately nodded and followed her to a secluded corner. Once alone, Tita adopted a provocative and sarcastic tone, testing Noddy's anger and humiliation at being falsely accused of impersonating her girlfriend by such a lowly person. Facing this provocative question, Noddy merely smirked faintly, calmly launching a deadly counterattack. He laid his cards on the table, revealing that according to confidential information he'd gathered, he was the mastermind behind the brutal murder. Had he driven her to the brink of despair? Caught red-handed, Ta's expression immediately changed. She shifted tactics, feigning sadness and injustice, adjusting her tone to sound weak and pitiful, and began to gloss over the fact that things were far more complicated than they seemed. Through her slanderous words, Tita painted a picture of Mai that was far worse and more wicked than Noddy had imagined. She boastfully told him to open his eyes and watch the show. She boldly declared she would personally unmask Mai, exposing her true, evil nature for everyone to see. Hearing this blatant nonsense, Noddy felt nothing but nausea. He sternly warned her. Tit immediately stopped this ridiculous charade, bluntly criticizing her despicable behavior as utterly pathetic. Those sharp words were like a bucket of cold water poured over her face, only fueling the burning resentment in Ta's heart more fiercely than ever. Meanwhile, in a quieter moment, Mr. Kill was relaxing in his office, leisurely browsing the school forum, reading the flattering comments his students had written about him. The teacher read the comments, a smug smile playing on his lips. However, that smile vanished when he suddenly stopped at a particularly strange anonymous comment. The scathing accusation leveled harsh charges against a new female student for brutally mistreating a classmate to the point of causing the victim to take her own life. Even more horrifying, the cold-blooded killer was now brazenly attending class 5/3 at the same school. That evening, Mrs. Kwan sat alone, gazing at Min's commemorative photos, unable to control her emotions, and burst into tears, overwhelmed by the grief of her unfortunate daughter. A moment later, hearing Mai unexpectedly open the door and enter, she hastily hid her belongings and wiped away her tears. Seeing her foster mother looking sad, Mai Tian approached and gently asked if she could share the bed with her tonight. The moment Mrs. Own Zhang opened her arms wide and hugged Mai tightly, the familiar warmth emanating from her body intensified her heart-wrenching memories of Min. The next morning, at school, she noticed a strange and suffocating atmosphere enveloping her. Wherever she went, she was met with scrutinizing, curious, and prejudiced stares from everyone around her. The moment Tita peeked through the classroom door, the group of delinquent students in the back corner immediately began whispering and gossiping. They deliberately raised their voices, bringing up the story of the cruel girl who had brutally assaulted her classmate, and then began making sarcastic and mocking remarks. They mocked and ridiculed him, calling him incredibly audacious and shameless for causing such a scandal and still daring to show his face at school. Then, the crowd turned to Kat, pressing him to confirm whether the shocking story was true, and presented incredibly sharp arguments. They pointed out that the mysterious initials on the forum perfectly matched the name Tid. The article even explicitly mentioned the initials of his old school in Brainbura province. Facing these scathing accusations, Tia trembled uncontrollably, as if possessed. At the same time, Mai Tinko happened to pass by and luckily overheard the entire confrontation. It was quite different from usual. This time, they could only sit silently, biting their lips tightly, refusing to utter a word in defense of their new friend. In this deadlock, TA took the initiative to approach Kat and strike up a conversation. Deep down, she still clung to a faint glimmer of hope that Kat would take pity and offer protection, but unexpectedly, Kat reacted incredibly harshly by standing up from her chair, coldly turning her back and walking away. Feeling rejected, Dia glared angrily at her, her eyes blazing with intense resentment. Seeing this, Gan subtly stepped forward, breaking the awkward silence by pretending to be cheerful and suggesting they go to the canteen for snacks tomorrow, without anyone saying a word. The other students in the class also simultaneously sneered in disgust and left one by one. They heartlessly abandoned Tid, leaving him standing there, weeping bitterly amidst loneliness and utter humiliation. Huddled in a corner of the deserted classroom, Tita bitterly replayed the harsh insults her classmates had just hurled at her. Those humiliating words felt like thousands of knives tearing apart her usual pride, simultaneously igniting a burning hatred for Mai that was more intense than ever. Unable to stand idly by while she was crushed, she immediately pulled out her phone and typed threatening messages. Reeking of hatred, Tita sent a message to Noddy. She furiously declared that everyone at the school would find out Mai's fake identity today. Unfortunately for her, Noddy wasn't holding his phone to read the message. He was completely focused on preparing for the crucial national swimming competition, with no time or energy to worry about Zamba's pointless threats. Returning to the noisy atmosphere as the students gradually made their way back to their seats, Kat began openly expressing her disgust and frustration at being forced to sit at the same table with someone like Tar, who claimed music was murderous. Meanwhile, the unruly students at the back of the class still wouldn't let up, continuing to loudly criticize her as a coward, unwilling to admit her cruel, demonic nature, enduring their harsh insults. Tita could only grit her teeth and silently endure it, knowing she had no right to argue. The pent-up resentment finally erupted when Mai's figure slowly entered the classroom like a drowning person grasping at a straw. Tita immediately stood up from her seat, puffed out her chest, and confidently walked to the podium in front of the class. She slowly broke into a sinister and cruel smile.
Ta glared defiantly at Nati.
It wasn't until the intense training session ended that he had time to pick up his phone and was shocked to read Tar's chillingly threatening message. Sensing something terrible was about to happen, he didn't hesitate for a second, rushing back to the classroom to intervene. But things didn't go as planned. In the midst of frantically crossing the road, Noddy lost his balance and was hit by a passing car. The impact was quite strong, causing him to fall and suffer a very serious arm injury. Meanwhile, back inside the classroom, Tia stood tall on the podium, his arrogant gaze sweeping over his classmates, before speaking in a provocative, sarcastic tone. Tita sarcastically remarked that it seemed everyone here shared a morbid hobby, gossiping behind people's backs. Without hesitation, Tita brazenly admitted to being the female student whose initial was T in the expose. However, she cunningly countered with a question designed to appeal to the crowd's emotions, questioning if no one was curious about the true appearance of the unfortunate classmate rumored to have died. Immediately after her bold declaration, Tita pulled a past photo of Mai from her pocket and held it up for everyone to see. The whole class immediately gasped in astonishment, utterly shocked and unable to believe their eyes. The photograph clearly revealed that Minute and the girl named Mai looked exactly alike, like two peas in a pod. Even though they had completely different names, they stood frozen in place, witnessing this shocking revelation. Mai, disguised as Minute, burst into tears, overwhelmed with grief. Seeing their friend devastated and in tears, the crowd of students immediately gathered around to comfort her, encouraging her to bravely expose the whole truth. They solemnly pledged to always stand by her side, ready to lend a helping hand through this storm. Amidst the chaotic and irritating noise, Gankan felt utterly disgusted and could no longer tolerate it. He slammed his hand on the table and stood up, his stern voice drowning out all other sounds. He angrily retorted to the crowd, asking if they were truly confident that they had studied together long enough to claim they understood everything about Minute. His reprimand left T standing on the podium bewildered, completely oblivious to Gankan's deeper meaning, and utterly uninterested. Gankan turned sharply to look directly at Mai with an incredibly sincere and warm gaze, urging her to bravely speak up and correct the record. For him, this was a sacred family secret, and only she had the right to decide whether or not to reveal it. Just as Mai had mustered enough courage and was about to speak the truth, Noddy, with his arm twisted in a panic, rushed into the classroom. Gasping for breath, he angrily glared at Tia from the podium, scolding her. "Why are you wasting your time sending those pointless spam messages?" he sneered. "Is it really necessary to make such a big deal out of something as trivial as this girl?" Noddy's furious reaction caused the entire class to exchange bewildered glances, completely baffled by what was happening before their eyes. Before quickly regaining their composure, Noddy began his speech to appease the crowd. He cleverly fabricated a lie, claiming that Minute was still struggling with amnesia and hadn't yet recovered her memories. Using this as an excuse, Noddy confidently declared that he would represent Minute and reveal the whole secret, because he was Min's childhood friend and the one who understood her best in this room. Noddy began to recount Bid's story fluently, explaining that Minute was an orphan who had been adopted by a kind Mrs. Kwan when she was 10 years old. Only recently had she accidentally discovered a shocking truth. She had a twin sister who lived far away, and the deceased woman named Mai was actually that unfortunate twin sister. Upon hearing about the tragic circumstances, the students in the class immediately became enraged, turning to curse and berate TA severely, accusing the music of her cruelty directly causing Min's younger sister's death and driving her to despair. Tita frantically stammered an explanation, claiming that Mai was still alive and well. In a flash, Noddy countered with a sharp question. If Mai was still alive, then who was the real victim who lost her life in that cold river? Caught off guard by the question, she was speechless. At this point, the class's anger flared up even more fiercely, unleashing a torrent of insults and harsh criticism. In their extreme agitation, the group of troublemakers at the back of the class nearly attacked, but Own ganged up on her to teach her a lesson. As for Noddy, immediately after brilliantly playing the hero rescuing the damsel in distress, he staggered out of the classroom. However, due to the severe injuries from the car accident, which left him disfigured, he couldn't stand and collapsed unconscious right in front of the door. Panicked, Mai and everyone else rushed Noddy to the hospital for emergency treatment. After the scans and tests, the doctor delivered some bad news. Noddy's shoulder blade had suffered a serious fracture due to the impact. Worse still, they had inadvertently discovered a hidden injury that seemed to have recurred a long time ago. Noddy's father and his swimming coach were both extremely surprised upon hearing this. Because he always kept his injury a secret, never mentioning it to anyone, the doctor seriously finalized the treatment plan, requiring Noddy to temporarily suspend all sports activities for 6 months to focus on recovery. The doctor also couldn't be 100% certain whether he would be able to return to top-level competition afterward. The next day, at school, Kat patiently waited in the hallway with a remorseful expression to appease Lilane. Although Lila remained stubbornly angry and refused to open her mouth, Kat had no choice but to quickly apologize repeatedly. She pleaded and begged until her friend finally relented and forgave her. The following day, Noddy's swimming coach visited him at the hospital. He delivered the difficult news with a heavy heart. Noddy had to follow the doctor's advice and take a 6-month break from training to receive treatment. Overwhelmed by the bad news, Noddy immediately lost his composure, shouting and screaming, reacting extremely violently and negatively. He complained that just 1 day off from swimming caused his performance to plummet. And now he'd been bedridden for half a year. Hearing his students lament, the coach could only sigh, gently patting Noddy's shoulder to encourage him to be strong and never think about giving up. Faced with such sincere advice, Noddy could only helplessly burst into tears like a child. Coincidentally, Mai, disguised as Minute, happened to walk to the door of the room and overheard the entire tragic conversation. The coach, his voice filled with worry mixed with reproach, scolded Noddy for recklessly rushing out into the street. Despite the danger, he emphasized that no matter how serious the matter was, it wasn't worth risking one's life so foolishly, and he was so lucky that the accident didn't take his mother's life, standing by her bedside with tears streaming down his cheeks. May sobbed for a while, then sadly turned and left. But as soon as she returned to the room, Noddy deliberately put on a cold face, resolutely remaining silent and refusing to respond. Although Mai gently expressed her deep gratitude for his bravery in saving her from the humiliation caused by T, Noddy only uttered cold and harsh words. He declared that his actions were not at all out of a desire to protect her. Hatch Ditch ordered that if he had fulfilled his duty of gratitude, he should immediately go home. Just then, a nurse pushed a medicine cart into the room. Mai quickly volunteered to stay and help, claiming she would wait until Noddy had finished her meal before leaving. Noddy, however, stubbornly refused, loudly telling her to stay and not allow her the chance to care for her. While the two were arguing, Gankan arrived with a basket of fruit. Seeing her rival, Noddy angrily chased them both away, wanting to avoid disturbing the patient. Gankan reluctantly took Mai's hand and pulled her out into the hallway to talk. Mai sadly confessed that she really wanted to take care of Noddy herself. She begged Gankan to just go home first. Stubbornly clinging to that idea, Mai once again returned to the music room. Seeing Noddy struggling to unscrew the cap of a water bottle with one hand, she rushed over to help. Unexpectedly, Noddy rudely pushed her hand away, causing the water bottle to fall to the ground and shatter. He then unleashed a torrent of harsh words, driving her out of his sight. Despite her patient attempts to soothe him and express her desire to care for him, Noddy coldly and mercilessly refused. He even forbade her from calling him by his name affectionately, declaring with disgust that he didn't want to see her hypocritical face for another second. Having been cruelly driven away, Mai reluctantly accepted the harsh reality, gathering her belongings and leaving. As soon as she stepped into the hallway, she collapsed onto a bench near the window and sobbed uncontrollably, overwhelmed with sadness and despair. Meanwhile, Noddy, after heartlessly driving her away, curled up alone in his room, his pillow soaked with tears, returning to the suffocating atmosphere of Ta's house. Her mother was using every sweet word imaginable to persuade her husband to help their daughter resolve the situation. She begged him to use his power at all costs to ensure Tita no longer had to attend the same school as Mai. After the couple finished their discussion, Tita timidly approached, bowing her head and apologizing to her mother for the terrible trouble she had caused. Immediately, her mother gave her a sharp look and, in a stern yet arrogant tone, began to lecture her. She warned her daughter that there was no need to humble herself, because only those who do wrong need to bow their heads and apologize. Emphasizing that she must not show any weakness, she promised to use her money and power to personally settle all the troubles. This declaration of power acted as a stimulant, further boosting Ta's boundless confidence and reinforcing her misguided belief that she was an innocent victim with no fault of her own. The next morning at school, Bale, feeling bored and disheartened, decided to skip class. He was stealthily heading towards the school gate with his bag when he was spotted by Mr. Kill, who happened to be passing by. Seeing a student loitering during class, the teacher frowned and questioned him. Without hiding anything, Bale frankly admitted his intention to skip class. Teacher QE immediately raised his hand to stop her, but P stubbornly slipped past him and ran off, disappearing from sight despite the warnings. Meanwhile, in a secluded corner of the library, Mai was deep in thought searching for a book when TA suddenly appeared and started a fight. She sarcastically mocked Mai's reputation at her old school in Brachenbury, showing no sign of flinching. M calmly retorted with a sharp retort that Tita's popularity at school was equally resounding, because now everyone knew the heinous crimes she had committed in the past, and they had hit her where it hurt. Tita then shifted her attack, questioning what kind of spell or mind-altering potion she might have used to brainwash Noddy, challenging her to see if she still harbored the illusion that Noddy would blindly protect her forever. By chance, Benz, carrying a book, overheard the entire tense conversation. Hiding behind a bookshelf, he continued to listen. Not stopping there, Tita aggressively declared she would use every means to turn Mai's close friends against her, isolating her until no one was left. Facing this threat, Mai showed no fear, coldly advising Tita to first sort out her own miserable situation. Since it wasn't crowded during the break, Mai brought her tray of food and happily ate with Lylane. Meanwhile, Tia Da quietly carried her tray of rice to a quiet corner to eat alone. Seeing Kat passing by, Tia Da pretended to be friendly and waved, inviting her to join them. However, Kat Rung, completely unconcerned about her hunger, carried her tray of rice straight to Mai's table and sat down to eat heartily. In the quiet space of the teacher's lounge, Mr. Kill and a colleague were making tea. Coincidentally, Mr. Kill noticed an old math exercise book neatly placed on his desk and, out of curiosity, flipped to the cover. He was shocked to see the name Jun clearly written on the cover, and immediately ran to the principal's office with the book in his hand. Mr. Kill seriously presented the most suspicious point of the case. This was precisely the book that had been lying on the desk, playing around, and on that fateful day when the girl died. Looking directly into his superior's eyes, he pressed him to remember the serious case involving that female student. Hearing the mention of the past, the principal frowned slightly, slowly flipped through the book, and then thoughtfully asked Mr. Kill for his deduction about the culprit. Without hesitation, Mr. Killu shared his assessment of the sender of the books, suggesting it was most likely someone who had been present at the scene that day. A heartless individual deliberately putting on a show, pretending not to know anything, ignoring the situation as if nothing terrible had happened. The principal waved his hand dismissively, advising him not to overthink it and tire himself out. He coldly declared that the case file had long been closed by the police. Seeing this, Professor Keogh resolutely reiterated his vow to pursue and take responsibility for investigating this injustice to the very end, unwilling to live with the guilt of living the rest of his life. Having poured out his heartfelt words, he angrily turned and walked out of the room. As soon as he was out of sight, the principal immediately pulled out his phone and called a mysterious number, asking for their help in handling the matter discreetly. The scandal was related to Jun's death last year. After the afternoon classes ended, Mai decided to go to the hospital to visit Noddy herself. Seeing her, Noddy, lying on the hospital bed, let out a weary sigh in a troubled voice. He He confided that he truly didn't know whether to call her Minute or Mai, nor did he know what emotions he should feel after all the deceitful words she told him so far. But the only thing he was certain of right now was that he absolutely didn't want to see her fake face for another second. Standing rooted to the spot, enduring those heartless words, Mai's tears began to flow uncontrollably. She choked out a promise that once Noddy's wounds had fully healed, she would disappear on her own. She would absolutely never shamelessly appear before him again. Listening to those bitter farewells, Noddy's heart ached, tears welled up in his eyes, unable to bear the suffocating atmosphere any longer. Mai turned her back and walked out into the hallway, collapsing onto the floor in front of the hospital room door and sobbing uncontrollably. Amidst her choked sobs, she silently spoke her innermost thoughts to the man inside. Mai Sosa explained that the only reason she hadn't had the courage to tell the truth from the beginning was because she had foreseen the terrible outcome that would unfold today. In the depths of her torment, she admitted to herself that she was nothing but selfish, blindly clinging to the precious time she had left to fully enjoy the happiness of being with Noddy. The next morning at school, Bale arrived looking weary to see Mr. Kill. Upon seeing his student, the teacher sternly questioned him about where he had wandered off to skip class the previous day, given his firm demeanor. Pale honestly confessed that he had taken the bus to the city library because he felt that only when immersed in books could time pass quickly and peacefully. Sensing his student's weariness, Mr. Killu gently lowered his voice, thoughtfully suggesting whether Pale wanted him to personally call and persuade his mother. In response to that attention, Bale simply lowered her head, choosing complete silence as her answer. That same morning, Tia Lan La went to find Kat, proactively inviting her frienda to a quiet corner for a heart-to-heart talk. Seizing the opportunity, she continued her fake act by deliberately appearing weak and affectionate, shedding a few crocodile tears. Tid tearfully said that she had naively believed Kat truly considered her a good friend. Hearing those ridiculous, sarcastic words, Kat glanced at TA with eyes full of contempt and suspicion. She bluntly challenged TA to see if she really considered her a friend, while also throwing a stark, musical, truth in her face. Tia vehemently questioned whether the so-called close friendship between the two was actually just a staged act to isolate and torment Mai. Caught red-handed, Tia frantically used every trick in the book to try and cover up her true feelings. She loudly asserted that she had always genuinely considered Kat a close friend, even offering compelling evidence that she had personally helped Kat secure the valuable audition opportunity, all in an attempt to manipulate her. Tia deliberately threw out an extremely tempting bait. She revealed that her powerful CEO uncle was eager to sign an exclusive management contract with CT, then sweetly enticed Kat to ask if she wanted her to immediately call her uncle to finalize the contract. Kat didn't hesitate, immediately nodding in agreement and telling Tia to call quickly. Feeling triumphant, she dialed her uncle's number, introduced herself to the person on the other end of the line, and confidently handed the phone to the man who answered. However, as soon as she took the phone, Kat bluntly told the man that she was currently unable to sign any contracts. As for why, you should ask your precious granddaughter yourself. With that, she abruptly hung up the phone, looking directly into his face with a resolute and sharp gaze. She declared clearly that her desire to become a famous star was real, but she would absolutely never do such a despicable thing as betraying her friends. Kat laid her cards on the table, asserting that she had seen through Tia's dark ambitions and knew full well that she was plotting to stir up trouble and turn all of Mai's friends against her. Finally, she confidently concluded that the terrible scenario she had always wished for would never have the chance to happen. At lunchtime, Noddy, after a long hospital stay, was finally discharged. Upon returning to school, he excitedly joined Kat's group for lunch. However, even after just one simple meal, everyone could see how difficult Noddy was, his injured arm making every movement of picking up food incredibly clumsy. Seeing this, Ma, sitting beside him, felt an indescribable pang of sympathy and kindly leaned over to help him eat. Ironically, Gankan inexplicably interrupted, deliberately trying to take over everything. This rude interruption angered Noddy, causing him to angrily drop his chopsticks and storm out. Meanwhile, in the principal's imposing office, Senior Police Officer Pale had personally come for a private conversation to seriously discuss the ambiguities surrounding Jun's mother's case. Here, he revealed shocking information. According to records, the first person to discover Jun's lifeless body was Minute. Hearing the terrible news, the headmaster was startled and immediately called his subordinates, instructing them to retrieve Min's personal file and bring it to him for review. In a completely different development, within the tranquil grounds of the Brackenbury Provincial Temple, Minute silently appeared in the area where the ashes of the deceased were kept, standing there motionless for a long time. Her gaze silently fell upon Noddy's gold medal, neatly hung next to May's name. Returning to the school atmosphere, amidst the teachers' meeting in the assembly room, the vice principal spoke up, asking Mr. Kill to retrieve Min's personal file, as the principal himself had instructed that it was urgently needed. Upon hearing this, the trainee teacher quickly volunteered to be the errand boy, personally taking the file to the principal's office. As she entered the principal's office, she unexpectedly witnessed a scene. He was sitting and quietly discussing something with a police officer. Most notably, they were intently reviewing all the archived files concerning Jun's serious case. Seeing the authorities reopening her sister's case, a slight, triumphant smile flickered across her lips. After handing over the files, she quietly stepped out into the hallway, pulled out her phone, and dialed her mother's number. In a mysterious tone, she announced that their plans were about to succeed brilliantly. He urged her to be patient and wait a little longer. Elsewhere, inside a luxurious house, he happened to walk through the living room and was stunned to overhear his mother's extremely suspicious phone call. With a grimace on his face, the university lecturer was shocked to discover the shocking truth from the content of the conversation. His mother used money and shady social connections to bribe and ensure that all the students attending her tutoring center easily passed their exams and secured places at prestigious universities. At the same time, a commotion erupted at school when Tar's mother, furious, stormed into the principal's office demanding to see him directly. As soon as she entered the office, she threw Mai's personal file onto the desk. Loudly, she exposed the girl's true identity, that she was Min's twin sister. Not stopping there, she also falsely accused Mai of having abused her daughter at their old school, to the point that TA had to swallow her pride and endure expulsion. Ms. Vu Kong Mai continued her relentless pursuit, plotting to harm and injure the principal's daughter once more. Using a commanding tone, she pressured the principal to immediately sign the decision to expel Mai from the school. Listening to her arrogant words, the principal appeared extremely hesitant, seemingly unwilling to escalate the matter of expelling a student over a trivial personal microphone issue. However, true to her usual domineering and authoritarian nature, Tinder's mother stubbornly argued and threatened to use any means necessary to force the principal to carry out the order at any cost. That evening, at Pale's house, while his mother was putting on makeup to go out, police suddenly burst in and read out an arrest warrant. The charges leveled against them were cheating and bribery in the National University Music entrance exam. Hiding in a corner, watching her mother being led away, Pale's lips curved into a bitter, silent smile. The next morning at school, the wrongly accused Gankan, Kan and Noddy unexpectedly ran into each other in the hallway, sparking a bitter feud. The two boys raced down the stairs at breakneck speed, competing to see who could get there first. They nearly slipped and fell flat on their faces, having to brake sharply on the ground floor. They were stunned to overhear a group of female students gossiping excitedly. They were whispering to each other about the sensational news they'd overheard at a teachers' meeting. The school was discussing expelling Mai. The person currently living under Min's identity received shocking news, and both Gankan, Kan and Noddy didn't hesitate for a second, rushing off to find out the truth. Meanwhile, the lady of the house unexpectedly received an urgent summons from the school. At the meeting, the school presented a long list of ridiculous reasons to accuse her, from violating school rules by going to karaoke with friends during curfew to falsely accusing her of stealing an expensive diamond necklace. The principal fabricated dozens of other absurd charges. Music, aiming solely to corner Mai, who always wholeheartedly loved and protected her students, Mr. Kill bravely stood up and presented sharp arguments against this unreasonable decision, but all efforts were met with a resounding, merciless rejection from the powerful vice principal. Upon hearing the indictment, Mrs. Kwan was utterly enraged and resolutely denied all baseless accusations. She strongly asserted that her daughter had done nothing wrong, arguing forcefully that if the karaoke session was to be punished, then the entire class would be in violation. Why target only Mai? The false accusation of theft has already been investigated and proven her innocence. Not wanting to be outdone, the stern official threatened to officially sue the school for lax management and negligence in ensuring her daughter's safety during the field trip, which led to the serious and mysterious disappearance. Meanwhile, Mai was sitting huddled in the hallway, anxiously waiting for her mother's meeting. At her weakest moment, TA casually approached, uttering venomous words and mocking Mai's impending expulsion from school. She heartlessly reopened the wound, taunting that Mai was the reason Noddy suffered such a serious injury, depriving him of the opportunity to compete in swimming. While Tita was arrogantly spouting insults at others, she suddenly saw the lady of the house come out of the room, her demeanor changing as quickly as flipping a pancake. She put on a meek and polite expression, bowed sweetly, and then slipped away as if nothing bad had happened. Watching the girls retreating back, the lady of the house felt the face was very familiar, but she couldn't immediately recall where she had seen her before. Afterward, the mother and daughter helped each other leave. As soon as the parent-teacher meeting ended, Mr. Koo proactively sought out the principal for a private conversation, frankly criticizing the school's actions as completely wrong and unfair. However, the principal remained stubborn, insisting on maintaining his original stance and using the same old, nonsensical excuses to justify his actions. Even more outrageously, he ordered teacher Kyo to find a way to persuade Mrs. Kwan to voluntarily sign a withdrawal form for her daughter. Receiving such an unreasonable order, teacher Kyo reluctantly turned his back and left the room. That night, while busily tidying her bed, Mrs. Kwan suddenly remembered Ta's true identity. That was exactly the kind of disrespectful daughter who had assaulted M at the hospital a while ago, connecting the events with her heartbreaking account of how M and her bad friends had ganged up on her and brutally assaulted her at her old school. Mrs. Kwan rushed to her daughter's room to have a serious talk, gently advising Mai to transfer to another school, and she obediently agreed. However, Mai requested a short extension to settle some personal grievances before leaving. Furthermore, she confidently asserted that with the protection of the lady of the house, she had no fear whatsoever. Touched by these mature words, Lady Kwan MUI agreed to let her continue her studies for a while longer. Music. As for Pale, after his arrest, his mother was quickly released on bail thanks to the intervention of her powerful husband. Upon bailing his wife home, Pale's father angrily berated her, reproaching her for being so foolish as to commit such a blatant violation of the law. Even more heartbreaking, while her husband was a police officer, he revealed the shocking truth. The brave man who called the police was their beloved son. Hearing the harsh truth, Pale's mother was stunned, frozen like a statue. Just as the tension reached its peak, Pale's father returned home from school with his bag. The two faced each other, staring at each other in a terrifying silence, trying to suppress their emotions. The mother, in a trembling, weak voice, told her daughter to put away her bag, take a shower, and then come eat dinner. Behind the bathroom door, Mrs. Le could no longer bear it and collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. The next morning at school, Mrs. Le went to the teacher's room very early to see Mr. Koo. Standing before him, he bravely confessed the whole truth, admitting that he was the one who had secretly damaged his classmates' computers. Upon receiving the sincere confession, Teacher Koo stood before the class and announced the good news that the school would officially restore all the points deducted for the groups, and revealed that the culprit had voluntarily confessed their wrongdoing. However, the curious students still insisted on knowing the identity of the anonymous culprit, and continued to mock and ridicule Ta. Unable to bear seeing his friends unjustly bullied, T, with a guilty conscience, stood up and publicly confessed his guilt before the entire class, admitting that he was the one who had committed that despicable act. He bowed his head and sincerely apologized to everyone for his cowardice in not taking responsibility from the beginning. Hearing this unexpected confession, all the students in the class were stunned and speechless. Teacher Kui calmly explained Pale's pitiful circumstances, gently saying that Pale acted so rashly because he would rather sacrifice all his precious grades than lose his sacred friendship with his classmates. Regarding disciplinary action, the teacher announced that Pale's punishment was to help him with odd jobs for a whole month. After explaining the situation reasonably, Mr. Kill left the room feeling relieved. Immediately, the whole class rushed to pat Pale on the shoulder and comfort him. Not a single person uttered a word of reproach or anger towards him. Seeing that heartwarming scene of unity, Tina was filled with anger and jealousy, and angrily stood up and stormed out of the classroom. However, her friends no longer cared about her rude behavior. Some even loudly cursed at her behind her back, calling her selfish, wicked, and pathetic. After afternoon classes, Noddy, with his arm bandaged, slowly made his way to the swimming pool area. As soon as he arrived, his coach called him over and gave him a furious scolding. The coach was angry at his student's stubbornness and refusal to cooperate with physical therapy to speed up his recovery, and sternly threatened him. He declared that if Noddy continued to be so undisciplined and uncooperative, he would be forced to remove him from the national team's roster. With that warning, the coach angrily turned and walked away, heartlessly leaving Noddy standing there with a deeply sad and dejected expression on his face. Just as Noddy was about to turn and leave in frustration, she suddenly saw Mai huddled in a secluded corner, her eyes red and brimming with tears. It seemed she had been standing there for a long time and witnessed everything. Yet Noddy chose to be cruel, especially by ignoring her presence. Trung Jia, with a cold expression, walked past her, as if they were complete strangers. Late at night, My patiently waited in front of Noddy's house, her wait growing longer and longer. It was a long time before he finally showed up, his attitude still incredibly cold and indifferent, completely ignoring her, just like that afternoon. Seeing him silently walk past, intending to open the door and go straight inside, she hurriedly chased after him, calling out in a strained voice. She kindly inquired about the reason why he stubbornly refused physical therapy. She confessed that she had overheard the entire heated conversation between him and the coach that afternoon. In response to her concern, Noddy responded with a cold, indifferent tone, retorting, "Why are you meddling in his affairs?" She concluded with a statement that pierced his heart. He heartlessly declared that there was no relationship between them whatsoever. With those cold, heartless words, Noddy slammed the door shut, leaving me alone in the freezing cold. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. The next morning, as soon as the school bell rang, P obediently went to the library to do odd jobs for Mr. Kill as a punishment. Just then, Mike kindly came to help him rearrange the bookshelves neatly. While working, Pale turned to him and confided in him, reminiscing about their time in middle school when they rarely initiated conversations. Hearing this, Mike curiously asked if he had ever done anything strange or unusual in the past. After a moment of contemplation, Pale recounted a suspicious detail. On the fateful day that Run passed away, he happened to see Minute behaving extremely unusually, looking like someone who had just been in a deep shock, as if she had inadvertently witnessed something horrific inside the classroom. Unfortunately, just as he was about to examine her, his mother called urgently, so he had to grab his bag and leave. After recounting the terrifying story, P inquired if Mai still remembered anything about the ordeal. Mai sadly shook her head, replying that her memory was completely blank, and she couldn't recall anything from the past. Just as the two were whispering to each other, the trainee teacher unexpectedly opened the door and walked into the library, witnessing the scene. In another dramatic turn of events at Gankan's luxurious villa, taking advantage of his principal father being busy on a work phone call, he secretly disguised himself as a detective and stealthily sneaked into his private office. Gankan began rummaging through confidential files and unexpectedly discovered a top-secret document detailing Jun's mysterious disappearance. This was clearly a serious, mysterious case that the school had covered up with money. Most notably, the report explicitly stated that Minute was the first witness to discover the victim's body. Along with this chilling statement, a photograph of Minute was tucked inside. The next day, at school, with an extremely determined expression, Mr. Kill, music teacher, decided to go to the principal's office to discuss Mai's case once again. While the two adults were tense inside, Gankan secretly hid outside the door to eavesdrop. Teacher Kiwi frankly declared that no matter what coercive tactics the school used, the parents would absolutely never sign the withdrawal form for their child. Desperate, the principal resorted to a despicable tactic, proposing a public vote of confidence. Even though he knew perfectly well that all the council members were his puppets, upon hearing that despicable plan, Mr. Kyo launched a fatal blow, directly questioning whether the real reason he insisted on expelling him was to cover up any evidence related to Jun's death. However, the principal shamelessly continued to argue, vehemently denying the matter. Late in the afternoon, when the school was deserted, she quietly walked into the fateful classroom. There, her younger sister took her last breath, standing silently for a long time. Her eyes were filled with sadness as she remembered the image of her unfortunate sister, now present beside the old, worn-out desk. That evening, feeling dejected, P wandered alone through the streets, his phone constantly ringing in his pocket as his mother called repeatedly, urging him to hurry to his extra classes. At that moment, P felt life was incredibly suffocating and hopeless. He felt completely unable to be himself, always having to blindly follow his mother's pre-programmed rules and make bold decisions. He didn't go home and coldly pressed the reject button, refusing to answer any calls. At home, Pale's parents anxiously called him repeatedly until their phones were burning hot, but all they heard were endless busy signals, leaving them desperate and hopeless. Pale walked up to the rooftop of a tall building and stood there in the strong wind. He finally picked up his phone and called his father back. Upon receiving the call, his father didn't hesitate for a second, rushing frantically to the rooftop to find his son. There, Biela wept, pouring out all the pent-up resentment he had been holding inside, painfully confessing that he truly hated his mother. Hearing his son's confession, the father felt immense sorrow. Zhang embraced Pale tightly, using gentle words to comfort and soothe his troubled soul. He patiently advised Pale until he calmed down and obediently followed him home. As soon as they reached the door, his mother, like a lioness, roared and demanded to know why he dared to act so rebelliously and wildly. Looking straight into his mother's eyes, Kale calmly replied that he didn't want to harbor any more hatred towards her. He earnestly hoped that the mother and son would put the past behind them and start anew, while also pleading with her to immediately stop her illegal exam cheating. Hearing the heartfelt pleas of her obedient son, the mother was filled with remorse and wept uncontrollably like a child. It seemed that after that stormy night, the heartbreaking incident had helped the family members understand each other better and grow closer. The next day, as soon as the school bell rang, I suddenly received a mysterious text message from Jun's phone number. The message was full of commands and threats. Eco, if you want to know what terrible things you've done in the past, come to the 4 halves classroom alone immediately. After reading the chilling message, I didn't hesitate or show any fear, quickly heading to the meeting point, regardless of the darkness that had enveloped the entire building. Pushing the door open, she vaguely saw the figure of the teacher wearing a black coat that completely covered her head, looking extremely suspicious. At first, the skillful disguise made it impossible for Mai to recognize the person in front of her. It wasn't until Ms. May slowly pulled down the hood that Mai immediately recognized her. Without beating around the bush, Ms. May loudly berated Mai relentlessly. Minute mocked her, calling her incredibly terrible and cold-hearted. Then, she poured cold water on the situation by revealing a shocking truth. She was Jun's biological older sister. Time began to rewind to painful memories from the past, when Jun first transferred to Min's class. The two had been close friends since elementary school. However, ever since entering this new environment, Jun has been a constant victim of brutal bullying by a group of bullies. What's even more concerning is that despite Min's immense influence and status at school, to the point that no one dares to harm her, she heartlessly chooses to stand idly by, ignoring the need to help. Minute ignored her best friend, enduring those cruel acts every day. Until one day, exhausted, Jun fell asleep with her head on the desk during Mr. Kill's class. Unfortunately, at that very moment, Mr. Kill received a summons to a meeting. When the bell rang signaling the end of class, all the students rushed out. Leaving Jun still fast asleep slumped over the cold desk was the worst part. Even her best friend, Minute, carelessly turned her back and walked away without bothering to wake her up. It wasn't until late at night that Lin sensed something was wrong. Minute rushed back to the classroom. There, she was horrified to find Jun still lying motionless in the same position. The horrifying scene made Minute instantly realize the terrible truth. Her friend had met with misfortune. The entire gruesome sequence of events perfectly matched what P had witnessed and honestly recounted to Mai in the library back in the past. Despite Min's frantic attempts to wake her, shaking her, and wailing desperately, she remained unharmed. Jun lay there motionless, never to wake up again. The story of the past ended, bringing Mac Phim back to reality. At this moment, the sewing teacher was sadly telling Mai, in Min's body, a bitter truth. She revealed that the real cause of Jun's death was acute meningitis, and Jun breathed her last at 3 p.m. on that fateful Friday. Tragically, in a crowded classroom where everyone was still studying, not a single person paid any attention to her sister's health. And what angered her most was the callous indifference and heartlessness of her closest friend, the one named Minute. Furthermore, the school used its financial power to cover up and conceal the truth about Jun's death for a long time. After spewing out her accusations with a gleeful and resentful tone, she coldly strode out, heartlessly locked the door, trapping Mai inside, and escaped. However, fate had other plans for survival. By chance, Mr. Killu, while patrolling the corridor with his flashlight, spotted a figure lurking inside. He was able to rescue Mai safely, bringing her to a brighter location. Noddy had just finished a tiring physiotherapy session when he suddenly felt extremely anxious and worried about Mai's safety. He immediately ran around searching for her. Every corner of the school was buzzing with lewd whispers and gossip. Sensing the unstable situation, Teacher K called Noddy aside and carefully reminded him to quickly escort Mai home safely. As soon as they arrived at the gate, they were surprised to see Gankan already standing there, leaning against the wall. Seeing Mai safe and sound, Gankan rushed to greet her with eyes full of concern and worry. He anxiously asked Han if she was hurt, and at the same time, he sarcastically wondered if that hateful Noddy had played any tricks to harm her. Hearing those sarcastic remarks, Noddy could only shake his head in exasperation, coldly asserting that he hadn't done anything to harm her. Then he kindly urged Mai to go inside and rest, saying that all the trouble outside could be dealt with later. As soon as Mai's figure disappeared behind the door, Gankan immediately turned to stare directly into his rival's face. With a stern and blunt tone, he sternly reminded Noddy of a harsh truth. The girl standing behind the door was Mai, not Minute, who had loudly accused Noddy of making her cry. He issued an ultimatum. Noddy was forbidden from ever making her cry again. Having uttered those possessive threats, Gan Kanhian arrogantly turned and walked away. He left Noddy standing silently alone. The next day, at school, Mr. Kill summoned Minute to the office for questioning to clarify what had happened in the locked classroom the previous night. However, Minute was incredibly stubborn, resolutely remaining silent and refusing to utter a single word, concealing the identity of the heartless culprit who had locked her inside. She only revealed a small amount of information, that she had been continuously receiving threatening messages from Jun's phone number for a long time. After the investigation yielded no positive results, Mr. Kill decided to go to the security office himself to request access to the security camera footage. He was then deeply shocked when he clearly saw the face of the female teacher appearing in a clip. Immediately, Mr. Hot High rushed to search through the archives for the personal records of student Jun and the sewing trainee teacher. The results of the comparison left him stunned. Both had the same mother's name on their birth certificates. This irrefutable evidence confirmed to Mr. Kill that the sewing teacher was actually Jun's biological sister. Just as Mr. Kill was reeling from the truth, she happened to knock on his door, maintaining her composure. She invited him to dinner that evening, trying to suppress her mixed feelings. Mr. Kill nodded in agreement. That evening at the restaurant, Mr. Kill began to implement his perfect plan. He pretended to be so drunk he lost control, then mumbled a few words about Jun's mysterious death, banging on the table and blaming himself for being a useless and terrible teacher. Because he had been negligent in failing to protect the student's safety, the teacher was busy acting out a dramatic lament. Meanwhile, he subtly noticed the phone that Ms. May had left on the table, with its hidden recording mode activated. Seizing the opportunity, Mr. Kyo laid his cards on the table, clearly and bluntly stating that he knew Ms. May was the culprit who had locked Mai in the room, and resolutely declared that this time he would personally stand up and demand justice for Mai. The teacher even made a solemn vow: if he proved incompetent and unable to do it, he would voluntarily relinquish the platform so that the girl could plan her revenge herself. Hearing these heartfelt and resolute words, the girl was truly convinced and decided to place her trust in Teacher Kill. A few days later, shocking news about the mysterious death of student Jun suddenly broke out, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. The revelation caused the elderly principal to panic and become utterly terrified. He frantically called Tita's powerful prosecutor father for help in quelling the scandal. Music. Hearing the story, Tita's father adopted a superior attitude, agreeing to clean up the mess, but immediately set a condition. The principal had to use all his connections to support and assist him in the upcoming election. As soon as the deal was finalized, a swarm of reporters, smelling the money, surrounded all the school's entrances and exits. The principal had to struggle immensely, relying on security guards to clear a narrow path before he could climb into his car and escape home. After school that afternoon, Mai, with a heavy heart, wandered alone through the noisy flea market. Seeing a beautiful gold medal for sale by chance, she didn't hesitate to buy it as a souvenir. The next day, Mai proactively called Noddy and arranged to meet him at the park to talk. As soon as they met, she gently began, making one last request. She pleaded, "Could you please be kind to me, just like you used to be?" She had just announced some sad news. After today, she would officially be transferring to another school. After saying that, she sadly gave Noddy the gold medal she had just bought. Holding the strange gift in his hand, Noddy looked bewildered and asked for the reason, smiling sadly. Mai gave a very touching explanation. Because Noddy had only ever known how to give away his prestigious gold medals to others, today she wanted to personally give him one as a memento. Mai added a heartbreaking confession, admitting that she was always ready to sacrifice anything, just to make him happy like before, even if the price was a permanent disappearance from his life. After saying goodbye, Noddy Galling walked Mai all the way to her door. Just as she turned to open the door and go inside, he suddenly called her name, stopping her and sincerely apologizing. He apologized for being so disoriented lately, completely unsure of how to treat her properly. At the same time, Noddy promised that from now on he would respect her and call her by her real name, Mai. Their eyes met, and they both smiled brightly, completely resolving all the misunderstandings that had been weighing on their hearts for so long, as Mai happily opened the door and stepped into the house, where Mrs. Kwan was busy packing her belongings. At that moment, a strange girl burst through the door. And that mysterious girl was Minute. Seeing her daughter, whom she thought was dead, standing before her, Mrs. Kwan was stunned, her tears flowing uncontrollably. Seeing her mother, Minute also couldn't hold back her emotions and burst into tears, repeatedly apologizing for running away from home. The mother and daughter rushed to embrace each other, sobbing uncontrollably. At that very moment of emotional reunion, Mai came down from upstairs, directly confronting her twin sister. The unexpected encounter shocked her, leaving her speechless and unable to speak. The next moment, the three women, Mai Minute and Mrs. Kwan, were gathered together in the living room. They began talking to clarify the situation. They wanted to know why Minute had mysteriously disappeared. At this point, Minute tearfully confessed the whole truth. She had secretly returned to live in hiding at her old orphanage, the place where she had lived before being adopted by her grandmother. Even more heartbreaking, Minute revealed a cruel truth. The person who should have been adopted by her grandmother was Mai, not her. She also confessed to having accidentally met Mai in Brackenbury during a field trip, feeling immense guilt for seeing her sister endure a life of poverty and hardship for so many years. Minute thought that the only way to compensate for Mai's suffering was to voluntarily give up her position and return to her sister the right to live a happy and comfortable life. Minute also added another detail. The turning point came on that dark day when, standing on the Din Gwynsin Bridge, she bravely swam out to save her younger sister from the clutches of death, Minute explained, covering her face and sobbing. She added that the shocking news of Jun's wrongful death awakened her, prompting her to pack her bags and return home to confront and atone for all her mistakes. After Minute finished her long, tragic story, all three women couldn't control their emotions and rushed to embrace each other, sobbing uncontrollably once more. Meanwhile, at Gankan's house, a scene steeped in scheming, his father was entertaining guests and discussing business with Taa's father. However, this negotiation for mutual benefit seemed to have failed miserably. Ta's father clearly revealed his ambition to siphon off a huge amount of money from the school's secret fund to fund his election campaign. However, the principal adopted a very firm stance, resolutely refusing to release the money because it was actually a charitable donation fund intended for building the school. Rejected so bluntly and harshly, T's father was furious. He stormed off, stomping out. While the principal was busy seeing him off, Gankan cleverly seized the golden opportunity. He sneaked into the office and used his phone to photograph all the confidential documents containing evidence related to Jun's mysterious death. After successfully taking the candid photos, Gankan was caught red-handed by his father as soon as he stepped outside. Immediately, a heated argument erupted between father and son. His father was convinced that his beloved son was the one secretly spreading rumors about Gankan's death. Undeterred, Gankan vehemently argued back, firmly asserting that he absolutely did not engage in such clandestine activities. At the same time, he used a threatening tone to demand that his father not sign the papers expelling Mai, disguised as Minute, from school. The scene then shifts to the twin sisters Mai and Minute. They are sitting cross-legged facing each other on the bed. Having cast aside all their burdens, they happily embrace each other, chatting intimately and affectionately. Just then, Mai's phone buzzed with a message from Gankan. He casually mentioned he was at the park, falsely claiming he wanted some quiet time alone to contemplate life. After reading that ridiculous message, Mai immediately understood that Gankan was just playing coy to lure her out to meet him. As Mai strolled leisurely towards them, Gankan resumed his theatrical act, deliberately displaying a cold and indifferent expression. Seeing this, Mai cleverly countered, feigning a pout and turning to leave. Just as the singer was about to break free, Gankan frantically called out, hastily confessing that he had only wanted to catch a glimpse of her beautiful face and couldn't restrain his emotions any longer. He mustered all his courage and confessed his romantic feelings. Hearing the sudden declaration, Mai could only stand there, blushing, awkwardly apologizing to politely decline. Seeing this, Gankan didn't hesitate, immediately rushing forward and hugging her tightly from behind. Although Mai tried to resist, pushing his arms away, Gankan, a notoriously rebellious and carefree young man who had never known fear or cared about anyone's feelings, was now weak and shedding tears. He spoke in a pleading, choked voice, saying his heart truly couldn't bear this feeling any longer. He desperately wished for the privilege of holding her like this for just a moment, even if it only lasted a brief minute. Faced with Gankan's heartbreaking sincerity and vulnerability, Mai finally relented. She stood perfectly still and obediently, allowing herself to be embraced warmly in his arms. The next morning, Minute, in flesh and blood, officially returned to school. Walking down the hallway, she happily waved to Kat and Lila, much to their surprise and astonishment. They whispered amongst themselves, wondering why her style of dress and behavior today was so much like their old friend Minute. Leaving the curious stares behind, Minute stormed straight to the principal's office, standing directly in front of him. She declared emphatically that she would absolutely never transfer schools. She defiantly challenged him, stating that no matter what dirty tricks the principal used to pressure her, she would remain steadfast and continue her studies at this school to the very end. Back in the noisy classroom, amidst the excited chatter of everyone huddled together discussing whether the rumor about Minute transferring schools was true, Tia Da strutted in, loudly interrupting them. She arrogantly declared that she had prepared a very special gift for Minute, but before she could finish boasting, Minute walked straight in from the doorway with an air of immense authority. Lin Xiang was still a fake as always. Music immediately rushed forward to try and wash away the humiliating attack. Gao declared that she possessed irrefutable evidence, fingerprints, proving that the person standing before her was indeed Mei. Neither Mei nor Chen Chu flinched. Minute truly looked straight at Matia, using a firm voice to assert that she was absolutely not going anywhere. Not stopping there, she emphasized the shocking news that she was the real Minute, not an imposter. Then, confidently turning to the class with a smile, she announced the good news that her memory had finally fully recovered. Hearing that firm affirmation, the whole class cheered with joy, their intuition telling them otherwise. This was exactly the familiar Minute they had once admired. In this comeback, Minute decided to take control of the situation. She proactively launched a counterattack, relentlessly bombarding T with sharp questions, closing in on her opponent. Minute pressed on with tense questioning. Was it true that she had heartlessly beaten up her sister? Was it true that T was the ringleader of the gang that brutally abused her sister? Cornered, T, enraged, swung her hand, intending to deliver a powerful slap in retaliation. But quickly, in a flash, Minute raised her hand to block the malicious blow, intending to retaliate with a slap, but her hand suddenly froze in midair as she realized a profound truth. If she also used violence to settle grudges, her own actions would be equally despicable. She would be no different from a vile person, reminding herself to keep a cool, calm head and not let rage overwhelm her reason. Minute decisively lowered her hand, suffering a humiliating defeat after being counterattacked. Tid fled the classroom in a panic. Witnessing the entire dramatic scene, the whole class applauded and cheered loudly for Minute, creating an atmosphere as enthusiastic as watching a live boxing final. A moment later, Gan Kan leisurely walked into the classroom. Although he saw the girl standing there, his keen intuition immediately sensed an unease emanating from her. At lunchtime, Gan Kan, sticking to his usual routine, carried his tray of food and sat down at the same table. However, today her attitude was extremely strange. She stubbornly maintained a cold expression and refused to utter a single word. Even when Lan La tried to strike up a conversation, she harshly scolded him. At this point, the naive Gan Kan was completely unaware of the shocking truth. The person sitting opposite him was actually the real Minute. The tedious lunch ended, and Ding Ning saw that the other girl was Mai. Seeing her friend's stubbornness, he instinctively tried to gently push her head as a joke. Unlike usual, Minute reacted fiercely and aggressively, immediately pushing his hand away with all her might. With a terrifyingly cold glare, she spoke in a voice laced with hostility, challenging him to see if he was tired of living for daring to touch her. The shock from that outrageous swear word was like a bucket of cold water, jolting him awake. He was stunned to realize the bitter truth. The arrogant girl in front of him was very likely Minute. He nervously lowered his voice. He inquired about Mai's whereabouts, annoyed by the constant, unwelcome interruptions. Minute responded curtly and dismissively. M had already packed her bags and taken a bus back to her hometown of Brackenbury ages ago. Meanwhile, amidst all this turmoil, at the principal's office, he immediately summoned the trainee sewing teacher for a confrontation. Slamming his hand on the table in anger, he bluntly questioned whether she was the anonymous person who had leaked the secret information about Run's death onto the forum. Without hesitation, he bluntly declared that he had thoroughly investigated her background and knew she was the victim's biological sister. After a heated argument, feeling his authority threatened, the principal made the decisive decision to fire her immediately. Looking distraught, she left the room and coincidentally ran into Mr. Kill in the hallway. When the teacher anxiously pressed her about what insults the tyrannical principal had hurled, she recounted how she had been officially fired. More bitterly, she tearfully confessed that all her actions over the past period was simply to awaken Long Kai, to remind everyone of the existence of her unfortunate younger sister and to make them understand the immense pain she had endured. But what pained and frustrated her most was that public opinion was currently focused solely on identifying the person who posted the exposé, and no one was genuinely interested in understanding the deeper reasons behind Jun's wrongful death. Despite her vehement denials that she never posted the article, ironically, no one believed her weak explanation. Listening to her heartfelt, tearful words, Mr. Koo clasped the seamstress's hand tightly, his voice firm, affirming his absolute belief in her innocence. The truth was, he was the one who had typed and posted the anonymous expose online. He explained his risky action. He did it simply to fulfill a promise he had made to her, bravely declaring she would confront the principal directly. Admitting she was the mastermind, she was quickly stopped by the principal's outstretched hand. She sadly shook her head, believing it was pointless now, because the core reason for her cruel dismissal was her status as the victim's sister, not the post itself. Despite the objections, Mr. Kyo remained incredibly stubborn, firmly holding his ground. He would use all his connections and every means possible to protect Ms. May, determined not to let her be unjustly dismissed. In another development, Mrs. Guan personally took Mai back to the music orphanage in Brackenborough province, weeping bitterly. She earnestly pleaded with Mai to reconsider and return to live with her. Just then, Tun Kao came out of the house and was surprised to see Mai standing right in front of the door. He froze, stunned and motionless. When he regained his composure, he rushed to embrace Mai tightly, satisfying his longing. Soon after, Ms. Day and all the other children also rushed outside in joy. They were overjoyed. Ms. Day was so moved that she even shed tears. That evening, while Mai was busy packing her personal belongings, Gan Khan suddenly appeared and began scolding her at length for leaving on her own and coming all the way here. Coincidentally, the children in the house just rushed in. Lin Nam thought Tone was going to harm Mai, so Tone ganged up on Own. Seeing this, Mai quickly intervened, trying to stop the children's adorable protective behavior. A little later, while the mediator was sitting down for dinner, the children surrounded her, staring intently, refusing to back down. He chewed his rice while making a grumpy face to tease the other children. Just then, Mai slowly entered the room, advising Gan Kan to go home quickly because he had to get up early for school the next day. However, he stubbornly ignored her, arguing that even if he went to school he wouldn't understand the lessons at all, so he decided to stay put. Helpless in the face of his stubbornness, Mai reluctantly agreed to let him stay overnight, then gently urged the younger children to go to sleep before returning to Noddy. He proactively arranged to meet Mai at the swimming club, only to find out that the person who showed up at the meeting point was actually Minute. And Noddy was completely unaware that Minute had returned to school. Noddy began by announcing that he had started physical therapy. He remembered promising Mai that if she diligently followed his advice, she would never disappear again. However, after a short conversation, Noddy began to feel something was very strange. Realizing that the girl's behavior was completely unlike Mai's, Minute, without further concealment, recounted old memories to help Noddy understand his true identity. Upon hearing the harsh truth, Noddy was utterly shocked and resentful that Minute had so heartlessly toyed with her feelings. Despite his earlier concern for her safety, Noddy, leaving behind her reproachful words, turned and walked away. The next day at school, Minute ran to Noddy, whining and trying to coax him into sitting outside. Still seemingly angry, Noddy coldly pressed her about Mai's current whereabouts. Minute honestly replied that her sister had taken a bus back to Brachin-bu and didn't know exactly when she would return. Then, Minute curiously asked what had happened while Mai was impersonating someone here. Before Noddy could even open her mouth, Tia rudely interrupted. Maliciously using divisive words, she deliberately brought up how Noddy had once cared for Mai so attentively, even risking her life to save her from danger. Hearing that critical detail, Noddy suddenly realized that the person standing in front of her was definitely Minute, not Mai. Continuing her manipulative tactics, Tid glanced at Minute and then threw out a tricky question, pressing Noddy to reveal who she truly had stronger feelings for. Instead, Minute immediately lunged forward, confronting Noddy and declaring that Zamba's cheap divisive tactics were completely ineffective against her, proving she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Tid, however, remained calm, lashing out and raising her hand to retaliate. Minute stopped her arm and, using a cold, stern voice, warned Tia to know her limits, because a lowly person like her absolutely could not undermine her will. Having finished her warning, Minute arrogantly turned her back and walked away with an extremely cool, ruthless demeanor, leaving Teacher Kill standing behind, stunned and speechless. The teacher secretly met with P.S. father privately. He honestly recounted the entire mystery surrounding Jun's death. He confirmed that Jun had indeed died suddenly during class. However, the school administration used money to cover up and conceal this cruel truth. Meanwhile, Minute and Noddy were confiding in each other, explaining clearly where they had been hiding during the past period. After hearing this, Noddy eagerly asked if Minute had called Mai last night. Minute happily confirmed that the two sisters had chatted and inadvertently revealed the details. Gankan had also stayed overnight at the orphanage. She wondered how Mai could be so close to a rebellious person like Gankan. Upon receiving that information, Noddy chose to remain silent and ignore it as if she were deaf. As for Mai, she was reluctantly saying goodbye to Gankan, as he had to pack his bags and return to Bangkok today. In a gentle tone, Gankan promised to patiently wait there, hoping that one day Mai would agree to return to the city. The next morning, Mai carefully carried a bouquet of fresh flowers to the cemetery. She approached the grave that everyone mistakenly believed to be her final resting place. Upon arriving, she was astonished to see him standing there, lost in thought. Mai approached and greeted her old friend, and gently shared that she often came there whenever she missed Mai. Also confessed that deep down she strongly believed this grave was not Mai's. Believing that she was still alive somewhere, Mai was extremely surprised and wondered how knew this shocking secret. Calmly recounted the entire past. She said that exactly 3 days after Mai disappeared, in a moment of extreme grief and torment, she happened to find the name tag that Mai had thrown away on the bridge. On her way home, accidentally discovered the body of a drowned woman washed ashore. Driven by a desperate desire for revenge against Ta, she secretly placed Mai's name tag on the stranger's body. The plan succeeded. Everyone was convinced the body was Mai's. As a result, Ta was ostracized by her friends and eventually expelled from school. However, not long after, Tita unexpectedly ran into Mai in Bangkok. Recognizing her identity immediately, she began trying to expose her. Knowing this, secretly tried to help by writing anonymous expose posts on forums, revealing all of Mai's wrongdoings. Confessed her deep guilt, feeling immense remorse because Mai had bravely stood up to defend her. While she was too cowardly to ever help, she now longed to atone for her mistakes and make amends. Hearing those sincere words, Mai was moved to tears, embracing her tightly. That evening, as Mai sat alone gazing at the glittering gold medal, Tun Kao trotted over to chat. Curious, I asked if Mai planned to return to Bangkok, as her foster mother and friends were anxiously waiting there. Smiling, she patted my head and promised she would never heartlessly abandon everyone. Hearing this, Tun Kao whimpered and sobbed, saying she didn't need to do anything grand, just 3 small conditions: come back for my birthday, visit me on International Children's Day, and go play in the water together on Songkran's Day. I wiped away my tears. Yang Yang said that was all she wished for. Faced with such naive and far-fetched requests, Mai was so moved that she burst into tears, standing outside the door eavesdropping. Ms. D, unable to hold back her sorrowful tears, rushed to hug Mai tightly, comforting and soothing her. The next day at school, Mr. Kill seriously went to see the principal to submit his resignation, seemingly unwilling to let him leave. The principal argued that in Jun's case, no one was actually to blame. Shaking his head in refusal, Mr. Kill frankly admitted his own fault for failing to protect the student, and vehemently criticized the principal for his heartless cover-up and concealment of the truth. Having exhausted his innermost thoughts, Mr. Kill turned and walked out of the room, heading towards the inner chambers. While Gan Kan was chewing his rice in the cafeteria, Noddy, music, slowly approached him. Noddy coldly asked if he had just returned from Brachin Bu chewing his rice. Gan Kan calmly replied that he couldn't contact Mai anymore. It seemed she had changed her phone number and wasn't responding. Noddy silently sat down, observing his actions, feeling uneasy under his intense gaze. Gan Kan, out of curiosity, asked Noddy if she was feeling jealous. Noddy, however, remained silent and refused to answer. Noddy only inquired about Mai's well-being. When Gan Kan nodded in confirmation that she was fine, Noddy nodded slightly as if she understood, then stood up and left, leaving Gan Kan sitting alone at the table with a bewildered look in her eyes. In a more tense turn of events, Tita not only threatened Mai verbally but also ruthlessly called her gang of thugs in Brackenbury, ordering them to come to the orphanage to teach Mai a lesson. Just then, Minute emerged from behind Hung Ho, decisively snatched the phone from Tita's hand, and threw it forcefully to the ground. She then stomped on it, crushing it to pieces. Seeing his property vandalized, Tia was furious but didn't dare retaliate. Minute coldly kicked the broken phone aside, then proudly turned and walked away. That evening, as soon as he got home, Gan Kan went straight to his father. He forcefully presented irrefutable evidence that his father had been involved in the fake medical document ring. Looking at the stack of documents on the table, his father flew into a rage, shouting at him to see how much more he intended to harm him and what his ultimate goal was. In contrast to his anger, Gankin sadly replied that he had no idea what he wanted. He bitterly admitted that he had a golden opportunity to ruin his father, but ultimately, he couldn't bring himself to do it. In a serious tone, Gankin demanded that his father personally handle the cheating matter thoroughly. He emphatically stated that he would consider how his father handled the consequences as the official answer to the question of whether he truly loved his son. The next morning, a large police force arrived and read out the arrest warrant for the principal right on the school grounds. Curious students crowded around in a circle to watch. Amidst the noisy crowd was the boy, who rushed towards him in a panic, his face filled with despair. But everything happened so quickly, he didn't even have a chance for a final farewell hug with his father. When he was escorted to the police station, the principal took full responsibility for the crime. He claimed he was solely at fault in this operation, asserting that no other individuals were involved. He asserted that he was the mastermind who directly ordered everything to be carried out. In a more peaceful place, Mai packed her bags and moved in with Mrs. Kwan. She hurried to find Noddy, carefully bringing her gold medal with her. She wanted Noddy to personally deliver it to Minute, because she remembered he had promised to give Minute the medal after winning. It seemed that after all their ups and downs, the two had begun to understand each other better, chatting happily and becoming close again like before. While browsing the web on her phone, Mai coincidentally read a breaking news report about the principal's arrest. The shocking news made her realize something terrible. Gankin must be incredibly distraught and heartbroken right now. Without hesitation, she dialed his number. As expected, Gankin was indeed bedridden with illness. At the hospital, Mai used Gankin's phone to call his mother to come and take care of him. When Gankin's mother rushed over, Mai, sensing his presence, excused herself to leave, giving him some privacy. Slowly opening his eyes, Gankin saw his mother sitting beside him and weakly reproached her for abandoning him for so long. With tears welling up in her eyes, his mother tried to explain everything, confessing that she truly loved him, but her guilt had prevented her from facing him. Listening to her heartfelt confessions, Gankin gradually understood her mother's suffering better. Realizing that her mother truly loved her, the two sat down to talk, resolving all misunderstandings, and then shared happy smiles before returning to school. In the quiet space of a library, Ms. May was wistfully gazing at the old books that her younger sister Jun used to love reading. Minute slowly walked over to her. By this time, the two women had had a very long and profound conversation. Finally, all the knots of resentment and bitterness that had been weighing on their hearts were completely untangled. That evening, Noddy sat alone in her room, silently gazing at the two glittering gold medals that symbolized Minute and Mai. His father, with his keen insight, immediately sensed that his son was having relationship troubles. He used the story of his own love life with his mother as an excuse to offer advice. He recounted how, as a young man, he had boldly pursued his mother right after graduation, and the reason for his hasty actions was that his mother was always there to share his joys and sorrows. He feared that if Tran Tru were to leave, he would forever lose the most important woman in his life. Listening to his father's romantic story, Noddy suddenly had an epiphany, immediately realizing who his heart truly belonged to. He ran as fast as he could, dashing out of the house. As soon as Gankin was discharged from the hospital, he immediately went to see him, and Tian Mai smiled brightly. Gankin said he had found the secret to never being sad again, always finding a way to be by Mai's side. Hearing his sweet words, Mai was so embarrassed and flustered she couldn't speak. In the midst of their emotions, Gankin leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. Music. How ironic. At that very moment, Noddy arrived, frozen in place, witnessing the entire shocking and heartbreaking scene. The next morning, with a furious expression, Noddy waited ready to confront her rival in front of the school gate. The image of the two lovers kissing was constantly haunting her mind. Yesterday, upon seeing her rival leisurely approaching, Noddy aggressively blocked her path, sternly declaring that there was an important matter to be clarified. While Gankin was still bewildered and didn't understand what was happening, Noddy looked him straight in the face and boldly declared that she really liked Mai, and firmly asserted that she would absolutely never give up or surrender her to Gankin accepting the challenge. Gankin smirked and loudly retorted that he, too, would absolutely never give up easily in the world of music. Today seems to mark a milestone, the tumultuous beginning of a forbidden love triangle. Elsewhere, in the council meeting room, Mr. Kill walks in solemnly to announce his formal resignation. Hearing this, the vice principal frantically pleads with him to stay a little longer so the school can arrange for a replacement. At MUI Long's request, teacher Kyo reluctantly agreed. During lunchtime, while the group of unruly students at the back of the class were happily eating, TA unexpectedly approached them. See. The whole group immediately unleashed a torrent of sarcastic and mocking remarks. Unable to withstand the pressure of public opinion, Tid covered his face, turned his back, and ran away, hiding in the restroom to cry alone out of humiliation. But as soon as she saw Minute enter, Tia immediately put on a brave face, trying to appear strong and arrogant. Seeing her pathetic state, Minute coldly criticized and advised Tia, "Look in the mirror and see how pathetic and fake you are. Don't try so hard to appear strong anymore." At the same time, she sternly told Tia to quickly examine herself and change her ways. Meanwhile, while Gankan was sound asleep, Minute secretly came to see him. Upon opening his eyes and seeing Minute, Gankan was visibly disappointed that it wasn't his usual friend. Crossing her arms, Minute directly asked if he had a crush on her sister. Despite Gan's stubborn refusal to answer, Minute coldly warned him. She herself really disliked him constantly pursuing my like that. Gankan argued vehemently, saying that there was nothing wrong with a handsome guy like him pursuing her, and even claimed that my hadn't complained at all. Faced with such excessive self-confidence, Minute delivered a fatal blow, questioning whether Gankan had ever asked himself that question. Did her younger sister really know how she felt? That thought-provoking question left Gankan speechless. After school, Tita ran home to find her father with a pitiful expression on her face. Little Tui cried and begged him to process the school transfer, but her father cruelly refused her request. As for Noddy, as soon as he arrived home, he was astonished to see his father arguing fiercely with a driver of a luxury car. Because of an inconsiderate parking violation blocking the driveway, the driver, unable to win the argument, became arrogant and punched Noddy's father hard in the face. Seeing his father attacked, Noddy, overwhelmed with anger, charged at the driver and beat him up. The brawl resulted in both sides being taken to the police station to pay fines. As Noddy was about to leave after completing the procedures, he overheard Gankan talking to a police officer. This piece of the puzzle immediately revealed the truth about the principal's case. The principal in prison was his own father, the one who had intervened. Noddy's father spotted a male student in his son's school uniform and proactively asked if he was Gankan's classmate, receiving a confirming nod. Immediately after the introduction, he enthusiastically invited Gankan to his house for dinner. During the meal, Noddy's father frowned and questioned the two about what they had been up to at the police station. Chan Chu lied, saying he was just passing by and visiting an old acquaintance. Sensing the tense and suffocating atmosphere, the father cleverly excused himself to go into the kitchen to prepare more food to entertain the guest. Meanwhile, Noddy kept pondering, desperately wanting to ask directly if the authoritative headmaster was truly her biological father who had intervened. But despite much deliberation, he ultimately couldn't muster the courage to speak. That night, Minute and Ma lay in bed, hugging each other and whispering their innermost thoughts. Mai hesitantly asked her sister for permission to attend school in her place the next day. She really wanted to be the one to officially say goodbye to all her classmates. The next morning, the mischievous group at the back of the classroom huddled together, excitedly discussing and dissecting the news of the principal's arrest. The news report also hinted at the intriguing detail that he had a biological son currently attending the school. This detail fueled intense curiosity, leading everyone to speculate about the identity of this mysterious figure. The students at the back of the class continued to gossip maliciously, sarcastically remarking that with a father in prison like that, the son must be incredibly humiliated and depressed. Hearing Damchu's venomous words, Gankan became furious, jumping up and loudly declaring to the class that he was the principal's biological son. The whole class stared at each other in astonishment, but no one believed him. Some even rudely pointed and burst into laughter, mocking him for being ridiculed. Gankan angrily turned his back and walked out of the classroom. Knowing the truth, Noddy felt deeply sympathetic, but was also helpless as she couldn't do anything to help her friend. In a quieter place, the shrine for the ashes, Jun's family was offering incense and performing a ceremony to commemorate the anniversary of her death. At this solemn ceremony, Teacher Kill and Minute also quietly attended, looking up at their friend's portrait. Minute couldn't hold back her grief and burst into silent sobs. At that moment, her mother slowly approached, trembling. Jiang Rong wrapped his arms tightly around her, comforting and soothing his daughter's closest friend. The next day, Teacher Kill stepped onto the podium, his voice choked with emotion as he said goodbye to the class. After giving his final instructions, he busily packed up his belongings and left. All the students burst into tears and rushed out into the hallway to chase after him. Each one approached, sobbing, to express their respect and affection for their teacher. After those poignant moments, Mr. Kill left the school with his luggage. During lunchtime, Noddy slowly went to the library to find Minute, gently saying that she had come to officially say goodbye to her unrequited love, smiling sadly. Minute confessed that she had also once wondered what her true feelings for Noddy were. However, because they were so familiar with each other as friends, she never dared to dream of going beyond that. She gently revealed that she always felt happy and safe when Noddy was around, and sincerely affirmed that she wouldn't mind if he changed his mind and liked another girl, and that she could completely understand and accept that. As for Gan Kan, he took the day off from school, tidied himself up a bit, and put on the designer shoes his mother had just bought him to visit his father in prison. Upon meeting, Gan Kan proudly boasted about how he had changed and how diligently he had studied. Hearing this, his father, Dung Dung, tearfully apologized, regretting that from childhood to adulthood, he had never bothered to pay attention to his son's feelings. The father and son sat down to talk, resolving all the long-standing misunderstandings, which moved Gan Kan to tears. Before leaving, his father choked up as he expressed his greatest wish at that moment, to be free to sit and enjoy a simple family meal with his son. Wiping away his tears, Gan Kan firmly replied that he would patiently wait until the day his father was released from prison. Later that day, on the bus home, she unexpectedly ran into Noddy, and they happily sat next to each other. They chatted non-stop. When the bus reached the end of the street, as Mai was about to stand up and get off her backpack, Noddy suddenly reached out and firmly grasped her hand with a sincere look in his eyes. He gently asked if she could stay a little longer. Without answering, Mai silently leaned back in her seat, tacitly agreeing. Afterward, the two walked to their usual park to talk. Mai sadly recounted that the next day she would pretend to go to school in Min's place to say goodbye to her good friends who were about to leave. Suddenly, Noddy looked straight into her eyes, hinted at his feelings, and then abruptly pulled Mai into his arms, hugging her tightly. The sudden action left Mai stunned, completely unable to react or refuse. The next morning, Mai happily went to school and encountered Gan Kan mistaking her for Minute. He deliberately poked her head hard to test her reaction. Seeing that she was gentle and didn't fight back, Gan Kan was overjoyed to realize it was the real Mai. Just then, Tia happened to pass by, eavesdropping and learning that Mai had secretly come to school to say goodbye to her friends without hesitation. She secretly hatched a despicable plan, immediately calling Minute Tong Tien to threaten to release the video of Mai being stripped naked to the whole class, then arrogantly hung up. Hearing this at home, Minute was furious and rushed, music, to school. Returning to the classroom, Mai slowly walked to the podium to announce something important. Before anyone could speak, Tita rudely interrupted, standing up abruptly and loudly declaring she also had a secret to tell. Under the curious gaze of the entire class, she triumphantly announced she possessed a compromising video of Mai and excitedly offered to show it to everyone. In this critical moment, Minute unexpectedly burst into the classroom, leaving everyone stunned and speechless. Thinking she had just mastered the art of cloning, TA, seizing the golden opportunity, triumphantly declared that Mai was still alive and well, deliberately stirring up extreme panic. Without further ado, Minute lunged forward, grabbed Ta's shirt, and dragged her out of the classroom. Afterwards, the entire class bombarded them with questions about Mai's heartless deception and when she intended to reveal the harsh truth. Mai tearfully explained that she only wanted to switch seats with Minute for today. Her main purpose was to say goodbye at school and offer her sincere apologies to everyone on Min's behalf. Music. At this point, she dragged TA to a secluded corner and gave her a terrible scolding. She sternly warned that if the sensitive video clip leaked, it would become irrefutable evidence to convict her. Because T was so cruel and pushed her younger sister to the point of giving up on life, Minute sincerely advised TA to quickly reflect on her actions and change her ways before things went too far and it was too late. At lunchtime, Ma sat alone on a park bench, sobbing. After a while, Noddy kindly came to comfort her. Ironically, Gan Kan happened to walk by and witnessed this heartbreaking scene. Seeing Ma clinging to Noddy's shoulder, he bitterly accepted his fate as the loser. Lam Louis turned his back and walked away in despair. In his haste, he accidentally bumped into Lai Lane. Already angry, Gan Kan grumbled and scolded Lila for not looking where he was going. Unjustly scolded, Lila questioned why he was so upset for no reason. Then, teasing her or perhaps getting jealous because she saw her talking to another male friend, and being scolded for having unrealistic thoughts, La still wouldn't let up, displaying her narcissistic attitude and lecturing her that girls never like grumpy guys. The next morning, Minute proactively arrived at class early to try and make peace with Kat and Lila. After much pleading, both of them reluctantly forgave her, carefully reminding her to invite Mai over to their house for fun. Back in the classroom, the girls at the back were huddled together, gossiping about Ta. As soon as she stepped in with her bag, she overheard those venomous words, stopped to argue, and resentfully complained that no one believed her anymore. Just then, a student from outside walked in, stormed over, and started berating her fiercely. Without hesitation, he pointed directly at the door, telling her to quickly complete the transfer procedures to another music school. Unable to bear the pressure and humiliation from the public, she ran out of the classroom. During physical education class, the subject teacher smiled and introduced the new homeroom teacher to the whole class. That kind teacher is your teacher. The whole class was overjoyed, cheering excitedly at the news. As for Mr. Kill, he's now running his own tutoring center. Kan, the mischievous boy, went to register for extra classes, looking rather drowsy. I don't know if he's arrived for school or found a place to sleep yet. Noddy's story has also taken a turn. His father finally relented and allowed him to compete in swimming again. As for Minute, she's being sponsored by Mrs. Kwan to study abroad and pursue her dreams. With Mai by her side, Mrs. Kwan confidently signed the papers for Minute to study far from home. Gan Kan, seemingly unable to accept the truth about Wu Fang, stood up abruptly, turned his back, and stormed out. After school, Gan Kan secretly followed Mai all the way home. Although Mai remained silent, she sadly confessed that she really wanted to treat Gan Kan well to repay his kindness, but she couldn't bring herself to smile. Gan Kan told her not to feel too guilty, and she lied to herself that she was fine. Gathering all her courage, Mai bluntly stated that she had no feelings for him, then tearfully apologized from the bottom of her heart. Hearing Kwok Tuvu Fares' words, Gan Kan stood rooted to the spot, tears welling up in his eyes, and bitterly said, "It's her right not to love you, but you must promise to forever cherish this unrequited love for her." With those heartfelt words, he sadly walked away, his heart filled with disappointment. He had always been there to protect her, striving to give her everything good, only to be ultimately rejected and left unfulfilled. In a darker place, Tia retreated to her room, glued to her phone, reading hateful comments online. Netizens ganged up to criticize and vilify her character and that of her father. Suddenly, her father stormed in, furiously kicking down the door, yelling and blaming his daughter for everything. He claimed that her trashy scandals were the reason he was expelled from the party by the disciplinary committee. Having been subjected to her father's anger, T could only sob alone in her lonely humiliation. The next day, Lila Cat Minute and Mai Hun organized a warm farewell party. While they were enjoying themselves, T unexpectedly called, pleading with Mai to meet her for a moment. Mai agreed to go to the meeting place. Upon meeting T, she covered her face and wept, pouring out all her grievances and lamenting how she had been driven to a dead end with nowhere to go. She admitted that she now truly understood why Mai had once called her pitiful. It seemed that after her fall, T had come to her senses and regretted her cruel actions. Seeing her remorse, Mai, with compassion, forgave all her sins and returned to the party. That evening, Gan Kan proactively texted Mai, asking her to meet him at the park. Seeing Mai's gloomy face, he smiled brightly, told her to cheer up, and carefully reminded her to let him know when she moved out. He confided that he didn't want them to part ways in a sad atmosphere, because for him, Mai's image would always represent the most beautiful period of his youth. Hearing his sincere words, Mai felt much lighter in her heart. But when the moment of actual farewell arrived, behind Gan Kan's forced smile were bitter tears welling up. The next day, Mai was lost in thought playing with the teddy bear Noddy had given her when Minute pushed the door open. Without beating around the bush, she directly asked if Mai liked Noddy. Mai stubbornly remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. A little later, Minute gently told Mai not to worry and to acknowledge the true nature of her relationship with Noddy. Simply stemming from their close friendship, she sincerely urged Mai to seize the opportunity and make a decision before it was too late. Heeding the sensible advice, Mai didn't hesitate to rush to find Noddy. As soon as she saw him, she mustered all her courage and frankly confessed that she truly liked him, earnestly asking for more time to calm down and sort things out. Hearing her confession, Noddy smiled happily and replied sincerely that he was always ready to wait. No matter how long that time dragged on, Gan had now boldly shifted his focus to flirting with Lila when she blushed and questioned why he kept following and teasing her. Gan responded with a mischievous smile. According to psychology, when a guy tries to tease a girl, it means he secretly has a crush on her. Hearing such a bold flirtation, Lila became flustered and nervous. A few months later, on the bustling first day of the new school year, the teacher happily introduced a new female student to the class. That student was none other than Mai. The whole class was overjoyed, cheering when they saw Mai officially return to school. Meanwhile, Mai's father, after a successful period of rehabilitation, finally served his sentence. The two of them had the opportunity to sit down together and share a warm, happy family meal. As for Minute, even though she was studying abroad with her suitcase full, she still frequently video called to check on Mai and her mother's health. A few months later, Mai decided to return the commemorative coin to Noddy in person. She remembered her promise to return the coin once she had resolved her personal issues and was ready to start a new relationship. After enduring many storms, the two finally officially held hands and became a happy couple.